Let's get sweaty.
Hello and welcome back to the Shenmue Dojo Show. We are in Season 5. This is Episode 1. I am Skill Jim. Unfortunately, it is with great regret to inform you that I no longer have Matthew Oliver as the co-host. Apologies. But instead, we do have his evil twin brother, Matthew Bolivar. How are you doing, Matthew?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good, thanks. Of course not. That's Matt.
I should have played the evil twin thing and started
You
going
could
off
have done,
on
actually,
a sweary
yeah.
rant, shouldn't I? Oh, well.
It reminded me of the phone jacker thing when I was thinking about
yeah.
Bowl. Matthew Bolivar.
God, that's old.
It is a bit of a throwback. Happy New Year, everyone. Matt, what's your New Year's resolution?
Get Shenmue 4. That would be nice.
How are you going to go about doing that?
I don't know. I'm just going to harass as many people as I can and then hope that someone caves in and just gives me Shenmue 4. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, so the same thing we do every year then.
Yeah, the same thing we do every year.
Yeah, fair enough. Happy New Year anyway, all the same. We're in 2025 now. Hopefully this is the year of Shenmue 4, potentially. But if not, Steel Paws looks pretty good, which we'll talk about in a moment. Matt, I don't know if you want a little chat, just begin with, just sort of get into the swing of things, what you've been up to January.
Well, I mean, Christmas came and went, as we all know. New Year came and went, as we all know. I've just been playing some games here and there. I finished Batman Arkham Shadow. If you've got a MetaQuest headset, that is well worth playing.
Jealous.
Brilliant game. I can't sing its praises high enough. Playing Indiana Jones at the moment.
Okay.
Well, which on Game Pass, which I'm quite enjoying actually. I was tempted to wait and get it on PS5, but I thought, no, do you know what? I need to get on with it and get and play it now.
Really good. Looks stunning as well, actually, from what I've seen.
It's really good. It is really, really good. There's some little tidbits you go, and it's a bit like, oh yeah, whatever. But it's a good solid 8.5 out of 10 for me. So I'm quite happy with that. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm hoping to have done so. And then we're clearing out my office because I've got a little one on the way.
Oh, congratulations again, man.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm clearing out my office soon, moving into my wife's office, which has been cleared out. So I've got that space. But you know what it's like when you start moving things around and you've got to start chucking things out and all the rest of it. So it's a bit chaotic, but yeah, all good. Looking forward to it. But what about yourself, man?
Very good stuff there, Matt. Yeah. Christmas came and went. It's rapid, isn't it, really? How time flies, how fast it goes. It's like this build up to nothing almost, even though it was a really good day, really fun day. My daughter was spoilt rotten, of course, and you've got that to come, to be fair, Matt. Yeah. We decided to not get gifts really for anyone apart from my little girl this year. Just sort of wanted to, a nice sort of last Christmas in Stoke, I guess. If it works out that way. Obviously, plan is to move to Japan this year, so I suppose that is my New Year's resolution for this year.
It's a good one.
Hopefully that goes through. Yeah. And then start of January here, I've just had a week off, been playing Tomb Raider Remastered Collection.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Really enjoyed it, actually. I've literally just completed Tomb Raider 1 Remastered today, and I forgot how hard it is, to be honest, man. It's, if you don't use a guide, I don't know if I could do it. I remember having the primer guide back in the day on the Sega Saturn, and use that, of course, and then I've had to use YouTube, really, just to follow. There's a really good YouTube channel called Tartancroft, I think his name is.
Oh yeah.
And he's literally like a full stage he completes in 10 or 15 minutes. It's insane. He literally knows exactly where to go, how to jump. He doesn't even make a single mistake. You know, he's just running around jumping. So it's really, really good to follow along with, actually. If you get a bit stuck in Tomb Raider, you can sort of see where he went, backtrack, find some of the secrets that you missed. But I really enjoyed it, actually. A little underwhelming with the ending, actually. I don't know if you can remember the ending, but...
Not well, no.
Yeah, the end boss is a really cool fight, actually, and then there's like a big climbing up. It's like the Great Pyramid is like the final stage, and so you like sort of climbing up the pyramid, and then you jump out of it, and it's like a really cool finish essentially. But then there's like an end cutscene, and it's about 10 seconds long, and it felt a bit underwhelming. But there is all of the DLC on the discs, which is a weird thing to say for like a 1995 game, right? But there was like I guess it was released on the PC only, some content called Unfinished Business. So I'm looking forward to playing that because I've never actually experienced that. And then I think I'll probably just move on straight on to Tomb Raider 2, actually, because I really enjoyed it. I thought maybe it'd be one of those things where I sort of play a couple of levels, get the nostalgia out of me, and then put it to one side. But I've actually stuck with it and just had a nice time just sort of playing a stage or two every night, really. You know, just 20 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how stuck I get. Would really recommend that. I love how you can flick between the graphical styles.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It is really cool how they've done it. I know there's other games that do it, but I've never seen it as well integrated.
Yeah, and executed as that. I think it works brilliantly, doesn't it? You just like flick a button.
It makes me wonder, how are they doing it? Are they running 2 lots of the game at the same time? Like, I don't understand, because sometimes when you press it, the textures are like in different places, or like there'll be like a weapons pickup on the remastered version, and then you press it and it's slightly to the right on the other version, if you know what I mean. It's like, it's not like an identical, and I don't know how they're doing it, but it's a really cool effect all the same.
Yeah,
that's basically it, Matt, for me. I'd love to play more games. Like, I kind of want to give Sonic and Shadow Generations Cross Shadow Generations another go again, because I felt like I just sort of rushed through it because I wanted to complete it at the time and didn't really appreciate it. I was a little bit underwhelmed by that as well, actually. But saw the Sonic movie a few weeks back, and that was amazing.
That was good. That was really good. I saw that. It was really good.
Really, really good. Would recommend that as well. Just other than that, Matt, a crazy auction that we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Sure, yeah. I need to sell kidneys, I think, after that one, but we'll talk about that shortly.
You've got 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so let's move straight into the news section now, guys. You know, typical Shenmue Dojo show. If you join us for the first time, Season 5, we have a little bit of a chat at the start, then we go through some of the more recent Shenmue news. So, first up, Matt, the Limited Run Games merch came and went, actually. So, since the previous show, which was the Christmas show, we were speaking to George Kitchen and obviously about Dreams of Saturn 2.0, which is funny to think that the actual merchandise line from Limited Run Games hadn't been, I don't think it was even announced at that point. So we were sort of like on the precipice of, you know, this being breaking news at some point, and unfortunately we've not been able to have a show from then till now. Apart from the bonus show, I think we did mention it on the bonus show, but in between like the mainline shows here, this is sort of come and gone. But I mean, out of all the list of items there, Matt, have you got a favourite? You know, what was the standout sort of thing from this merchandise?
I mean, the standout item is the orphan cat plushie, the Mimi cat plushie, with the box and the plush tin of tuna. I mean, everybody, whoever came up with that idea deserves a massive pay rise, because I suspect they've probably sold a ton of them, because that's really unique and cool, isn't it? Like you, not to sound disrespectful to the other items, which all look quite good, that one stood out as like they thought out the box for that one, and I really appreciated that. I thought it was brilliant. And then sort of another shout out, I like the hoodie with the metallic ink, that looks really good. And I like the t-shirt with the Shenmue print in Japanese. I know it's quite a basic design, but I really like that t-shirt. I think I've got 2, one to wear and one for collection purposes. But yeah, generally impressed. And you've got all the other bits and pieces as well. The trading card, the pin, coin. I mean, I've bought all of it like you have. But was anything like stand out for you outside of certainly the plushie anyway?
Yeah, it has to be the plushie for me, but I will give a little mention to the skate deck as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's quite an unusual item. I know they did quite a few skate decks for Sonic Adventure when they did that release. So maybe the skate deck is going to be like a theme moving forward, but I'm assuming it's a really good sort of art piece to display on your wall. I've seen Sonic collectors have got those skate decks in the past where they just sort of hang them up on the wall and they look really cool. So I'm thinking, you know, I'm not going to put wheels on it or whatever and go skating down the road and scrape all the underbit of it, but just hang it on the wall, and I think it'll look a really nice little art piece on the wall.
Agreed.
But like you say, the kitten's probably the standout item, and I think Shenmue is at the point where we've had the same sort of artwork on posters time and time again. So seeing items like that is kind of what we want to see. We want to see more originality, and the kitten was something that I didn't even know I wanted, if I'm being honest, until I saw it.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You've just hit the nail on the head with these items. That you are right. I mean, we're 25 years in, which again we'll talk about shortly. But you're going to see a lot of the same designs because it's just been. There's only a limited amount of artwork that's out there. So to see something like that kitten, which is, if you're a Shenmue fan, you get it. You absolutely get why that appeals so much. But to think of that is what really impresses me with it, and that thinking outside the box and going, yeah, we've got all these basic sort of items, t-shirts, posters, whatever, but we need something right out there that's completely different, and that was really spot on in that sense.
And what I will say is, from the amount of people that have said what they've bought or we've been speaking to on the Shenmue Dojo Discord, it feels like a lot of people have gone for the kitten, so hopefully they'll get the stats through and they'll be surprised by how many people have actually purchased this kitten that is like a very unusual, like you say, only to Shenmue fans are going to know what it actually is. And hopefully that sort of shows them that maybe those are the type of things that Shenmue fans actually want. And it's not like the typical artwork that we've seen, like the Shenmue 1 box art.
Yeah.
It's trying to cater to a particular person that's like, oh, Shenmue, I need to buy that, because it's Shenmue. Or like just a Dreamcast fan, or like a nostalgia fan, like a retro gamer that sees Shenmue box art and they're like, oh, that, and the kitten, it doesn't really appeal. I think they'll be surprised that the kitten's actually appealed to quite an audience, really, and hopefully that just spurns some more unusual items in the future, that they're going to take a few more risks potentially and go down like the Tom's t-shirt route, or the mirrors, or maybe a little duck plush toy next. I don't know, for Shenmue 2. Oh, there you go. I just thought of it. The duck for Shenmue 2.
The duck would be quite good fun. I mean, yeah, that'd be good. The mirrors, though, as well.
And the medal.
Oh, and the medal, yeah. The mirrors has to be one. Like, everybody's cool. I've got some, like, custom-made mirrors. I've had them for a while, and they're very nice. I would kill for some official mirrors. It
honestly amazes me that they haven't happened yet, and the outcry for them as well. You'd think someone would have done them by now. I don't know what's taken them so long.
Yeah, I don't know, but again, there's going to be a Shenmue 2 line at some point, isn't there?
Yeah.
In this year, which and Josh
there's a chance
did assure me it wouldn't be January. I was thinking, please don't be January, because I'm going to be wiped out for money as it is.
Yeah, it is bad. It is bad news, and obviously with the trading cards that they've got going as well, where you kind of feel like you have to collect. Well, if you're going for the full set, you've got to collect each of the games lineups of trading card thing as well, and it's going to get messy, especially with the Shenmue 2. But yeah, hopefully that's further down the line.
Yes, much further down the line, please.
For sure. We will mention this briefly. Obviously, this is a Shenmue show. I just wanted to make people aware that Yu Suzuki and the WiseNet game studio that he owns, of course, are releasing a brand new game with Netflix. So obviously these, I don't know if you can actually play them on your TV, or this is more of like a mobile app sort of situation, but via the Netflix subscription model plan must be access to certain exclusive games that are on the Netflix system. Maybe some of them aren't exclusive as well. I haven't actually checked. In fact, I feel like maybe Sonic Mania's on there or something like that, right?
Yeah, it is definitely.
I've heard about something like that. But yeah, Steel Paws is going to end up on that service. Matt, if you want to explain maybe what Steel Paws is to the new listeners hearing this for the first time, perhaps.
I mean, again, announced at the Game Awards, so that would have been, I want to say, December 13th, late last year. Really cool trailer, like an anime type trailer, and actually somebody put a tweet out just saying they worked on a particular scene of it and came back and said they enjoyed working on it. So there we go. But it's a tower invasion type game where you basically raid this tower that appears once in every 100 years and fight off hordes of enemies as you make your way up. So it sounds like a very sort of, I say, basic concept in the, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, because it sounds like that sort of game you're going to pick up and get hooked on by the sort of like that gameplay loop of upgrading, battling enemies, smashing the tower, carry on and working through the levels that way. In terms of Netflix, now it's exclusive to Netflix at the moment. Now I don't know if that's going to be for a year, like very similar to Air Twister, which I hope it is that way, and that we maybe get this in 2026 perhaps. But you can access it through a PC browser on Netflix and use a controller. I am guessing, I don't know this, but you can use a controller with the Netflix app on your TVs as well, potentially. So again, it means
Would make sense.
you can play that game sort of at your leisure, almost like a console would do. It's tentatively slated for 2025. We don't know when, but I would say on the surface of it, and we've got everything on our website and screenshots and things, it looks like a good, fun game, and very, very much in terms of that design style. And it's got a very distinct art style. It's very colourful. It's almost got like almost a shell-shaded type look to it in some aspects. But I like the look of it. I like the art style, and I like the idea of the game itself. I'm quite keen to try it, and hopefully it's a rip-roaring success for Wisenet. I don't know how it quite works with how they get paid. I'm guessing they get a bunch of money up front, and then maybe something per engagement. I don't know, but the Wisenet are working. Another game. It was at the Game Awards. They recognised that Yu Suzuki is the creator of Shenmue and Virtua Fighter. Wisenet are in business. You can't go wrong, can you, really?
No, it's great news all around. I mean, I don't know what it actually means for Shenmue, whether or not, like you say, they've had a wedge of cash from Netflix, and I don't know, they're going to decide to use that for another Shenmue title. I don't know if it means that. I don't know. But all we can say is just go out, try and support it if you can. If you've got a Netflix account, definitely give it a go. It's a no-brainer. If you've got a Netflix account, just make sure that it's sort of saying that, oh, this person's actually trying Steel Paws. You know, these people actively wanting to play this game. Get some good numbers for Steel Paws if possible, and we'll see where it takes us.
Indeed.
So, another thing that happened at the tail end of last month was Shenmue turning 25. So that means it's the 25th anniversary of the original release of Shenmue on the Sega Dreamcast in Japan. Matt, you did a video to sort of celebrate the event, if you want to tell people what it is and where they can find it.
Yeah, so the video can be found on our YouTube page. It released on December 29th as part of the 25th anniversary celebrations that we did as the dojo. But actually, before I go into the video, the community did a really good job of getting out there, celebrating Shenmue. A lot of the Japanese sites, again, were out there celebrating. Sega weren't. I don't quite know why, but that's up to them, I guess. But I'll leave.
It's unusual. Like even the Japanese Sega account didn't. Very weird.
I know. So it's very, very strange. But anyway, so I put this video together. So I was very lucky to have people: Adam Korlick, Steve Lysett, Magnus, Josh from Liverpool Run Games, Lewis from Dreamcast Junkyard, two guys who run the Shenmue Dojo. I don't know who they are. We're in it as well. Casey. I'm trying to think if I've missed anybody. I think there was 10. Adam Scipione. There was 10 of us, I think, in the video. And it's just a love letter to the franchise. It is just why we like Shenmue, why it means so much. And I like to think it came out pretty well overall.
I thought it was great, mate, honest. Yeah, really, really enjoyed it. And it's just nice, get sort of sentimental vibes from all the people that experienced Shenmue back in the day. You know, every single person that was interviewed pretty much played Shenmue on release, and you know they've got fond memories of their experiences with it, and definitely a great video to check out if you're feeling a bit of like nostalgia for Shenmue again, especially if you're listening to us talk about Shenmue. You'll enjoy it. And then I think it was the same day, right, or maybe a little bit after, Shenmue had this sort of brief mention. I think it was like an interview with some Japanese developers, right? And
yeah.
I don't know how they got into it, but they brought up Shenmue and the fact that a PS2 build had been produced back in the day, which is insane, right?
Man, I don't know what to say other than what the hell were they thinking not putting it on PlayStation 2. So this came about essentially. Famitsu did like a round table interview with a load of the developers who worked on Shenmue. Kenji Miyake was there as well. And there were some other names who I didn't recognise offhand, but that's probably because of my ignorance more than anything else. And they talked through a lot of things. They talked about their experience on the project, the early stages, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, a bit about Shenmue 4 as well, which I'll touch on a little bit as well. But the big thing that came out of this was that Sega had internally a build of Shenmue that was running on PlayStation 2 and seemed like a decent way through. They said they could pretty much release it or be very close to releasing it. So I'd love to see what that looks like in terms of the difference to the Dreamcast version, because obviously the Dreamcast is a texturing powerhouse. PlayStation struggled with that, so they might have had to make some changes in terms of the graphical presentation, how that worked. And I know they talked about I think they had to take it out of assembler and put it into C or something like that in the interview. So it's a lot of work had already happened to then not release it. It's very weird. They also noted there was an Xbox port that didn't get released as well for some reason, and they slated that was because of the licensing that was already in the game. But we know years later they took all the licensing out. So I don't necessarily buy that excuse unless there was a set period of time that it couldn't be released on another console as per the contract. I don't know. But to not have this on PlayStation 2, we've all said it was mad. We've all said it was stupid. But the fact that it was actually a good long way and was seemingly almost ready to go, we could be in a very different timeline, parallel timeline. They've released on PlayStation 2, the series is finished, and we're now getting the like full-fledged remasters, you know? It's disappointing.
Definitely.
But I'm glad we know. I'd love to see a build of it, but I think that'll be one of those builds that's probably lost in a cupboard somewhere, and we'll never find it. But if anybody does have access to it, please let us know.
Yeah. Well, if not just to just give it a go sort of thing, but it is mental really when you think of it like that. If it could have been a multi-platform game, I don't know if we would have been in a better position than we are now, or it's all in hindsight really, isn't it? I mean, at the time, Sega probably weren't aware which was going to be the most successful console of the bunch, so maybe the exclusivity deal they had with Xbox, or Microsoft rather, at the time felt like the best course of action, I don't know, for that property. I know Sega were doing deals with different platforms, weren't they? Like, you got Billy Hatcher and the Sonic Adventure games were on the GameCube. Then you've got, like, Yakuza, Virtua Fighter 4, Shinobi. There was a few more games on the PlayStation 2. And then the Xbox had, like, Gun Valkyrie, Jet Set Radio Future. They all had, like, their own sort of exclusives. And unfortunately, or again, in hindsight, maybe unfortunately, it wasn't Shenmue that was on the PS2, because maybe that could have generated the fan base to I don't know, it's all hindsight. Like, Shenmue in a sense is on a PlayStation console now. It's on the PS4, it's on the PS5 in a way, so I don't know, maybe there would have been a different era of people back in the PS2 days than there is today, because obviously it would have been relevant graphically wise, and again, it's just one of those, it's more of a novel thing to hear, but if you actually think about what could have been, we never know, I guess.
It's hard to quantify. Yeah. I mean, at the time, the PlayStation 2 was the biggest, it was outselling everything anyway. It had the biggest install base going. It had a pretty good RPG scene as well at the time. So I do think there would have been a market for it.
True.
But I guess Sega were also in very much survival mode back then. So if they were getting big exclusivity deals, which was guaranteed money at the time as well, and they couldn't necessarily guarantee money return on a Shenmue or other titles if they were going multi-platform, I guess to a point it made sense because they needed as much money through the door as they could get. But for the franchise and I think limiting it to Xbox, which was a very good console, I have no issues with Xbox whatsoever. I had one.
I love mine.
I just think it's severely limited who could access Shenmue outside of the people who had a Dreamcast. Now, when you then put Shenmue 2 on Xbox, but don't release the first game, you release the DVD, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with the DVD. Again, you are just making it harder to access the series. So had they put one on Xbox, PlayStation, or both, and then release 2, I think you might be in a slightly different position, but you can't quantify it. You don't know, do you? It could have released on PlayStation and completely flopped, and that could have really killed things for all we know. So hindsight's 2020, but again, you just do not know. I'd love to travel back in time and find out, mind, but
we'll see.
It is what it is. And I will say they mentioned Shenmue 4 in this interview as well, and somebody who works at Sega said he'd love RGG to do it. Get on your bikes and do it then.
Well, speaking of Shenmue 4, there was another brief mention in Hobby Consolas, which I think is a Spanish publication, like a video game magazine.
It is indeed. So,
Okie dokie, what did they say?
So this was translated by Iago, who's very active on our Discord, and we've had the pleasure of meeting him at the Sonic Symphony over in September, I believe. Lovely guy. And volunteered to translate this for us. So I am paraphrasing this a little bit, but essentially Hobby Consolas have come out and said that they really, really want Shenmue 4 to be announced in 2025. And they've got some concerns that Yu Suzuki's working on mobile titles rather than sort of bigger titles, and questioned whether in games themselves on their own may have the capacity to do a Shenmue 4. but they remain hopeful. And actually, it's one of the first big publications out there that have been quite public and going, yeah, we want a Shenmue 4. Hopefully, that's partly as a result of all the campaigning the community's doing, and it's getting it in people's minds. But it's great to see that people are wanting Shenmue 4 I say outside the community. I mean that in the broadest sense, that
like the
people in the games media are going, yeah, we want a Shenmue 4. Let's get a Shenmue 4, and it just all feeds in, hopefully, into that momentum we've had coming out of 2024 and then into 2025 with obviously in and we don't know what's coming there either. So I'm positive about it, and let's just see where, life's a little mention. Hopefully we get more of them as the year wears on.
Yeah, for sure, man. Fingers crossed. So we're going to talk a little bit now about something that I don't know if we've shared too much of outside of this conversation that we're about to have. We haven't at this point. This is sort of like hot off the press secret sort of news, but maybe by the time you're hearing this, we may have mentioned this. It depends what happens, I guess.
Yeah.
But essentially, what was the date, Matt? So we were like the 15th of January, so it was probably like, so sort of the 12th to 13th of January, there was these auctions on a Japanese auction site, and essentially there was 3 separate auctions of sort of folders filled to the brim with classic, original Shenmue illustrations, artwork, concept art, etc. Nothing majorly spoilery the looks of like some of the images, which the seller did actually share images of the entire folders, which is unusual for an auction. But obviously the people that are going to buy it are potential big high-end collectors, and also mad people like me and Matt that we sort of teamed up with a few other people from the community in order to secure these documents, make sure they don't just fall into the wrong hands and end up on a shelf somewhere. We wanted to actually feed these back into the community via getting them professionally scanned, which we're going to go out of our way to do as soon as they arrive. Matt's going to make the trip probably to Stoke again, right? And we're going to go hit up the library, properly scan them in, get all the files, and eventually they will get released. But Matt, can you tell us what we're looking at here? What are these illustrations of? What can people get excited about with these?
I mean, they can get excited at a piece of Shenmue history here. There's all sorts of concept arts of like Rio, Shenhua, Niaosun, some of the areas in the game. I don't want to say too much just yet, because I don't want to spoil some of the really golden stuff that's in there. But there is some really awesome artwork of characters we know and love, some characters that may not have been seen before, some characters like for the NPCs, you can see their design profile from literally like the design artwork to the renders to the final model. So seeing that process in art form is brilliant. There's some sketches in there as well of Shenhua, which look fantastic. Nothing story spoilery, which is great. But this is a real sort of crucial part of Shenmue history. A lot of this stuff has been lost to the sands of time. And it's a big haul of I think it was 133 photos. And I think within that, there's multiple image, sketches.
I think we worked out there was over 300 documents, right, or something.
Bonkers. 300 documents that are going to be shared with the community and preserved forever, which I think is the biggest thing here. This is going to be preserved. Everyone in the community can access it and enjoy these sketches, artworks. Yeah, I don't want to undersell it, but at the same time, I don't want to give too much away because there's some really good stuff, but I want people to just get a little taster of what hopefully is to come. We don't quite know when it'll all be released yet, because obviously we've got to get it all shipped. Yep. We've got to check it all and do the scanning process, but within a few months, I would hope that we'll then start teasing things and announcing things and getting it out there. But yeah, James, I mean, your thoughts very quickly as well.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to see what we've got here. Obviously, the images have been released, but seeing them up close, these original documents that were printed and produced back in the day for the design of Shenmue, essentially, that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at like old original concept art. Obviously, we're very familiar with the CG artwork that was used for promotional purposes, and there's some artwork here that looks to be like outtakes of that artwork, like experimenting with what they wanted for the final actual version of this artwork that they're going to promote Shenmue with. So it's really interesting to see sort of the progression, some of the old CG Shenform character models, which don't look to be final, if you know what I mean. They're like sort of that period in between Project Berkeley perhaps and the actual release of Shenmue. It's like very essentially what we're saying is this is all original, like 1998 concept art, probably around that era, if not earlier than that, actually. Kenji Miyawaki probably hand drew a lot of these designs, these sort of character sketches. There's stuff from Shenmue 1, Shenmue 2, like Matt says, these areas that we're not going to tease at the moment, but there's a couple of screenshots of a particular interesting area that I can't wait to actually get these out there and shared. Again, like I say, nothing too spoilery through. It's not like we're breaking any sort of person's NDA from the past. But
no,
I want to know where these documents have come from, because the seller doesn't appear to be like the original owner. It appears to just be a sort of a pre-owned video game or second-hand shop sort of thing in Osaka in Japan. And it's just crazy to me that someone's potentially just walked in that shop at some point and handed them over and said, like, I'm getting rid of these, are they any use to you? Or maybe, I don't want to say, potentially someone might have died or something that used to work on the games who had these, and these have been handed down to a family member that doesn't really know what to do with them, so they've given them to a video game shop or something. I don't know. It's these things you do get this. Someone mentioned it earlier, which is like really interesting when you think of it, isn't it? How things end up in the hands of people. It tends to be just in a pawn shop, or just winds up somewhere on an auction listing, and the person that's selling it doesn't even know what it is. It's just mad that these things can happen. I sort of think about, there was a recent article, there was I think it was like a storage unit of an artist or a producer that's actually still alive, so I don't understand why he doesn't own it. But apparently some guy bought, you know how they do these sort of like storage hunter type shows where they buy a storage locker and whatever's inside is theirs. Essentially someone bought one, and it was like full of Michael Jackson old music that's never been released. So there's like CDs, cassette tapes, old DAT audio like things that you need like a specific equipment to play, and these like cassettes that list like all these song names that no one's ever heard of before. And it's just mad that Brian Loren has just come into my head as like I don't know if that's an artist or a producer. That guy's still alive, but all of his storage unit is in the hands of someone else now, who's potentially then going to put it on an auction thing to sell. It's mad how these things wind up in just random people's hands, isn't it? And I guess this is kind of what's happened here with the Shenmue design documents that we're going to be releasing very soon. So definitely keep an eye out on the dojo very soon, because we're going to get these scanned in the best DPI image files that we can get, and release them in that format as well. Very exciting times ahead. Need a breather after that. Right, so we're going to end the news section just chatting a little bit about some of the more recent Shenmue fan game projects. Again, Matt, we've got another one on the horizon here. This is coming from a Discord member called Idris, who has released a little trailer. It's sort of a teaser to a trailer that he's potentially suggesting is going to get released late January, so it might already be out at the time of hearing this particular podcast show. But the game is called Project Carlisle. Matt, what do you make of this?
Do you know what? I think it looks fun. It's obviously very early concept, but I think, again, you can see the Shenmue relevance in it with the jacket and the back and everything. It's very, very early footage. So I think I said this in the Discord, actually. Don't rush it. Release it when it's ready. But do you know what? Fan projects, I think, are the heartbeat at the moment with the community. Obviously, we haven't got Shenmue 4 news. We don't know what's going on within and Shenmue 3. But these projects keep the community talking.
Yeah, there always feels like there's something going on, doesn't there? Like these design documents now, like at least they're going to get us through a few months. And then you've got fan games that are going to get us through some more months. And then limited run games are going to release the Shenmue 2 merchandise line that are going to get us through some more months. Then Steel Paws is going to get released that's going to feel like we're helping towards a Shenmue. So there's always something Shenmue happening, I feel like. It's never like it was back in the day where we went like 10 years without anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, like I said, it looks good. It looks fun. And the more projects like this, the better at the end of the day. And it just, like you say, keeps the news flowing, keeps people talking, and just keeps the community active, which is vastly important. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely keep an eye on this, guys. It kind of reminds me, I know it's very, not visually stunning, but it looks to be almost like he's gone inspired by the Cut Boat chapter. I don't know if he is planning on sort of building that gap between Shenmue 1 and 2. Or it literally is going to take place in Carlisle, Project Carlisle. I don't know if Idris actually lives in Carlisle or he just happens to be fond of Carlisle. I think did I see some seagulls? I feel like in my head, I can picture some sort of seagulls and whatnot. But it looks to be taking place on a Ryo Hazuki-esque Genpu Maru ship. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what Idris comes up with there. And that sort of brings us into a little bit of a chat on Dreams of Saturn 2.0. So if you remember, guys, we were talking in the Christmas show, with George, actually talking to George, the creator of Dreams of Saturn. Obviously 1.0 released at the tail end of 2023, and 2.0 was his brand new release that was released at the tail end of 2024, just gone. Hopefully you guys picked it up, you played it, you loved it. It's absolutely amazing. I want to get some of your thoughts on what you thought of it, Matt. But essentially 2.0 adds on to the previous build, so you can still play the previous build. You can play through all of the Dobuita section, the Yamanoshi, Sakuragaoka Dobuita section of the game. And in 2.0, he's essentially added in the harbour, and there's a complete new story there. And actually, he outdoes himself, really. The story, the cutscenes, the gameplay, the mini games, it's just out of this world. And for me, the best part was that ending sequence. I just thought that was absolutely stunning. If he can create a game of that quality, again, like with Reclaiming the Path, if that's what he's building towards, you've essentially got what will feel to me like an officially released game. We've gone from out of the sort of the fan game elements, as George was sort of getting into to working with his software here. And now we're verging into what feels like a proper game, because that ending sequence felt like a proper game to me.
Yeah, it did. And I think you can see that the leap between Dreams of Saturn 1 and 2, if you sort of compare some of the first bits to the second part of the game, even like the ending of Dreams of Saturn 1 to sort of one of the first QTE sequences within Dreams of Saturn 2, you can see that George has taken that platform of DOS 1 and just built on it. And then again, he's looking to build on it and improve things. I think the game was brilliant, absolutely stunning. I finished it on stream, I think in January's stream. I need to sit down and play it like all the way through from DOS 1 to 2. And
it's
play
really good, yeah. I did that
way.
Would recommend that.
So that might be something to do over the year as well. But yeah, I think he's outdone himself again, and obviously he wants to do then a Dreams of Saturn 3 for Christmas coming, which is mad, and fair play if he wants to keep sort of improving that and doing those iterations of that. And I think it's then changed the scope of Reclaiming the Path, which I think is going to be a 2026 release now. But as I keep saying, it's ready when it's ready, and I'd rather he waited and did what he wanted with it and released it when it was ready than rushed it out.
Yeah.
Because if you rush it out, it's not going to be right. And I think he'll look at it and go, well, I could have done better. By the time Reclaiming the Path comes out, bearing in mind George is learning all the time as well, I think, like you say, we're going to be in for a real treat. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just take the time you need with it. But stunning game, superb fan project. And I think, yeah, in terms of expectation from the fan community, I think it's met the vast majority of them, and that's a big compliment
for sure, man, if not more. I would say, I think the moment they sort of put like a date on something, it ends up becoming a bit of a lot of pressure to you. So I think what George has done here and just said sort of like he's hopeful that he's going to work on Reclaim the Path this year, but he's not going to push himself to spend every waking hour of the day working on this sort of game. He's going to just work on it, because burnout is a big thing, especially with these sort of fan projects. And I know myself with the Shenmue World stuff, there's a lot of burnout, especially towards the end. You just sort of get to the point where you just want it out and just be sort of done with it. And then there's a little period of time where you have a little break, sort of catch back up, and then you sort of get the juices flowing again for another one. So hopefully George is on the path, pardon the pun, to doing that, with just putting it out there for a 2026 release. I think is probably the best thing to do there, so he doesn't have to really panic about it. He can just sort of work on it casually, and I'm sure it'll be a better game for it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you can download version 2.3, which is the latest build of Dreams of Saturn anyway, right now over on the dojo. Links will be in the show notes as well. If you haven't played it, there's also a Mac version. It's not just for PC, it's released for PC and Mac. Get on it, because you won't be disappointed. And we're going to segue into the main feature of the show now with a piece of music from Dreams of Saturn 2.0. This is a piece that George Kitchen has composed himself. Really, really nice piece here, and it's titled Another Christmas Alone. Welcome back, guys. That was Another Christmas Alone, piece of music from George Kitchen that was featured in Dreams of Saturn 2.0. All right, Matt, so we're going to move into the main discussion topic of today's show, which I probably should have mentioned at the start of the show, just so you didn't have to wait 45 minutes to find out what we're talking about today. But the main topic today is going to be following on from the Shenmue premiere talk that we did on the show before the Christmas special. So if you cast your mind back to the sort of the season finale of season 4, which was episode 8, it was the Shenmue premiere talk that we sort of discussed about, went in great detail on the Shenmue premiere. Now this interview is sort of the aftermath after the Shenmue premiere events that took place up and down the country in Japan. Really, really nice little interview here. I haven't actually read the full thing in depth, but I read the first few questions and I thought this is going to make a good podcast discussion topic, just sort of, because obviously it's with Yu Suzuki, just sort of see Yu Suzuki's mindset after the sort of the excitement of the premiere and still before the release of Shenmue. So it's sort of like that period between sort of the world finding out about Shenmue and Shenmue being released. So it's going to be really interesting. So this comes from, as per usual, phantomriverstone.com, who has done a translation of this article that was originally in the February the 12th, 1999 edition of the Japanese Dreamcast Magazine over there. So the interview was held on the 18th of January 1999 at the final press conference of the nationwide Shenmue premiere event that was held in Japan's 5 largest cities, Yokohama, Osaka, Fukuoka, Sapporo, and Nagoya, as well as Sendai. So the actual interview is called The 15 Secrets of Shenmue. which is really interesting. Nice, alluring title there, Matt. So, how do you want to go about doing this? Do you want me to read the questions and you sort of, I don't know, sort of take over Yu Suzuki's body for a moment, and
and I can read
you
the answers.
You can answer
out.
as Yu Suzuki, yeah?
Yeah, go for it.
Okie dokie. So, Secret 1, looking back on the nationwide premiere. So, talking about the Shenmue premiere here. In quotation marks, it says, "We haven't all met like this since the premiere in Yokohama, have we?" So the blue is actually Yu Suzuki.
Yeah, it probably leads in quite well, actually, because obviously this is sort of taken after the premiere, so the footage was shown was the first video of Shenmue. There's lots of people buzzing for reactions for it, and essentially this article goes through sort of the conference of the day, and they reveal the secrets about Shenmue that we all want to know one at a time. But first off, he gives some impressions of the premiere, and he said that personally he wanted as many people see the premiere, so right from the start he chose to hold it 3 times in Yokohama, which is mental. He wanted to at least avoid a situation of people not being able to get in after paying for a train fare to come along and experience it. So I was with the mindset that none of the venues had to be fully booked out. Of course, if all the seats had been exactly filled, that would have been best, though, and he laughed to that. But doing a nationwide premiere in itself was really my first time. There was a lot of new things that I couldn't completely foresee, depending on the venue. Some don't allow standing, and others running additional events isn't possible. But I'm really happy we had more than 100% attendance at the last three venues, and nationwide, more than 30,000 people attended, which is a good number. I think we worked it out as potentially more than that, didn't we?
I think it was, if every single event was fully sold out, which it seems like it was, then I think it was actually 35,000, right?
Something like that, wasn't it?
Sounds about right, yeah. Which is mad, really, isn't it? And I don't even know what he means by more than 100% attendance. Does that mean like more people than seats?
I possibly, and people stood at the back and just enjoying it from there. I don't know.
So that just shows you how excited people are to potentially see what this Shenmue thing's all about. So it says, if it had been for the sequel to a famous title, it would be one thing, but for an absolutely original title, reaching this level of attendance is indeed astonishing. We can say undoubtedly that the premiere ended up being a huge success. That's really nice to hear. So, so sort of casting your minds back to the premiere event and all of that, all the amount of things that they did. It was like a 2-hour show where they did like a full-on orchestra, showing gameplay footage, showing some behind-the-scenes sort of footage, special guests, special merchandise, free merchandise. So this massive event, it's just amazing that it was such a success. And like these are saying here, if it was a sequel to a game that was already popular, like Metal Gear Solid 2 or something, you know what I mean, that people had a real fondness for the first one, whereas this is a completely original game. So I think that is spectacular. It shows the excitement, and I guess that sort of takes us back to like if this was a game that was going to be released on the PlayStation, maybe it might have done even better in Japan actually when it was actually released rather than the sort of the Dreamcast. I don't know. Possibly. Right, so Secret 2, are there plans for the premiere video to go on sale or to be broadcast on TV, etc.? So there were rumours on the BBS, which is the bulletin board system, posts and elsewhere, that the video shown in the cities of Osaka, Fukuoka and the remaining 3 venues had been modified. But when asked about that, Yu Suzuki's response was,
no, they were the same. Now I'm going to caveat that with a little note from last time, where actually they streamed this apparently on the internet somewhere. So there may well, I know there's like low quality videos of the event, etc. But I do wonder if anybody ever got hold of that stream and ever watched it. Because
do you think that low quality video was the stream?
Could have been. Absolutely could have been. It would have made a lot of sense to have been. I mean, I think we'd have been watching it through a letterbox back in those days. And
well, honestly, judging by that footage, mate, it could literally have been letterbox footage, because if you think of putting that really, really small, it might be watchable. But in 2024, when you're trying to find the 4K button on the YouTube cog thing, and you're greeted with like 144p full screen, it looks a mess, doesn't it, really? So that potentially could have been someone recording the live stream back in the day. I don't know how that would have been possible, or maybe the words live stream was used in the wrong sort of
maybe
thing back in the day. You know what I mean?
maybe.
Like it was just a video that was released live or something. I don't know.
Either way, there was a video of it of
Yeah,
some description that people could watch and access, which I think in itself is brilliant. And like I said, I'd love to have gone at the time, but
I'd love to get that video in, like whatever the full K footage of it is.
I'd love to get the raw footage of that. I'm sure someone at Sega somewhere would have it. You'd have thought so, but good luck getting hold of it, I think.
Yeah, so it says, explain that firstly, an outline of the content of the video to be shown at the regional premiere events was decided, and at the Yokohama events, this was linked together in real time by the MCs and others. So apparently there were messages on the BBS board saying that the Yokohama event was in a different class. But considering that there was special guests at the regional events offering the chance to interact up close, and that any lack of live segments in the regional events was compensated by their flow being easier to follow, we don't think you can say that either one had the upper hand. However, with such comprehensive video in existence covering how it was made, through to an explanation of the game, we wish it would be seen by not just 30,000 people, but even more.
And then he goes on to say about that, right now we're holding a survey, this is on the internet. The release of the CD soundtrack is on April the 1st, is pretty much confirmed, but with the premiere video, it's not so straightforward. Lots of people say they will buy it, then I think we could release it. But on the other hand, if it would be shown on TV, then I think the timing of when to do it, factoring the game's release, is also an important factor to consider. And at the moment, a release date for spring is a bit dubious. And he sort of smiles at that one.
So I wonder if instead it was shown on a TV channel.
Maybe, yeah.
Like, was it NHK, perhaps, actually? I think actually showed the premiere video in full. And maybe just someone recorded it somehow back in the day, which is why it's so poor quality. I don't know.
Maybe.
And then there is an abridged version that's like maybe 15 minutes long, which is the version that we actually watched, wasn't it?
That's right.
In episode 8, season 4. If you want to see sort of our reactions to that, go back and check out that show. So there's actually a nice screenshot here of the Shenmue BBS questionnaire, which obviously has just been spoken about on Switch's blog here.
Yeah.
I don't know what the results of that poll were. You would have hoped people would have said yes.
You'd have thought
but obviously not enough people, I don't know, to actually get this as a physical release, which would have been amazing, man. Imagine if we'd have had like a DVD in our collections of this 2-hour sort of documentary on the making of Shenmue. That'd
be fantastic. Absolutely be pride of place, wouldn't it be?
Yeah. So it says, I see. But Yusan, if you were to do a 2-hour Dreamcast special on TV in a prime 2-hour time slot on a Saturday or Sunday, I think it would be really effective. I don't think I'm the only one who thinks so.
No, and I probably would agree with that. If they could have got the airtime, it might have been cool. And like, there's a photo on Switch's website of the stage and like how there's a lot of people there.
Oh mate, yeah, it looks really cool.
It was really, really good.
Wish we could find a time machine. So let's move into Secret 3 now. So what is the current state of development? So we heard Yusan say the words, a release date for spring is a bit dubious. So to be frank, I wonder what the current state of development is like. So you've got to think, where are we here? Did it say January 1999 and the game released December the 29th?
Yeah, 1999.
So these are almost a year.
Which sounds like, but we know with the state of the Shenmue project, and they had to get Nagoshi in to sort of chuck it out, not chuck it out the door is the wrong word, but make sure it was finished. So there was obviously quite a lot of work to do, but he says, actually, I haven't made a firm decision on exactly what I will do. Right now, work is progressing on each of the parts, and it's going so well that with another month's work, we'll be much further along, although how far, I can't say. Of course, for those parts that I can see have more or less reached the right point, work has started on blending them within the game. But for the parts that have still been extended, I want to see how they go for a little while more. So it's, again, I think this project sort of kept moving and moving and moving.
Do you reckon it's still Shenmue 1 and 2 at this point, combined?
I think it's split at this point.
You think it's split at this point?
I think
because if you think back to the premiere footage, we were seeing a lot of Shenmue 2 footage, weren't we?
I think it's split because if they're talking about extending stuff, I wonder if that's the Shenmue 1 element of it, but I could be I don't know, I'm guessing. Could be very wrong. Then he goes on to say, so at the present stage, I don't want to compromise and harvest the growing shoots at a uniform height. In terms of climbing Mount Fuji, I often say that we're probably somewhere between the 6th and 7th stations. And a note from Switch here is that Mount Fuji has 10 rest stations in total. Okay. So it's a good way along. But we can set our final goal even higher in order to produce something I'll be completely satisfied with. It may take a while longer, which again, I think is an insight into the project at the time, and I think people trying to usher it out the door a little bit.
Yeah, so it says, is it just me who thinks that if we get to see graphics made from going that far, then I'm happy to wait just a little bit longer? So again, sort of the sentiments we've just been saying for the fan games, if you want the best, we're happy to wait, but obviously this is costing Sega money back in those days. So and looking at these screenshots here, Matt, does this remind you of something?
It does, doesn't it? Just a little bit.
It looks like potentially we've just bought all of these documents that are just scattered around this room here.
Oh yeah,
or some of them anyway.
It does.
So just some captions to go with some of the images here. You can check out the video version of the podcast if you want to actually look at the images that we're looking at here. But it says, each piece of work built on the next in a monumental series of trial and error. So starting around 3 years ago, a huge number of image boards have been made for the completely original creation that is Shenmue. So 3 years ago, so potentially these documents could be from 1996.
Yeah.
Could put a date on some of this stuff. So it says the characters, the game world, the setting, the direction for these was decided after numerous remakes, and now the final touches are soon to be put on the direction of the game part. And then it says, Shenmue, no compromise was permitted for her character's creation. Her picture was brought to life from the canvas. And then there's an image of Kenji Miyawaki, that is, actually he's drawing Shenmue.
Yeah, God, yeah. Ooh, that looks fun, doesn't it? In a good way.
And then there's just a suggestion from Switch to watch the GDC 2000 video with Yu Suzuki, which is probably something that we can look at in the future, Matt.
Absolutely.
So let's move into Secret 4 now. So what kind of game do you want it to be? So there are some that really aren't sure what kind of game Shenmue will be. But Yu-san replied to us as follows when we asked, in what ways will this game be able to be enjoyed?
And he goes, it's the destiny of the RPG, or to put it another way, with a story-based game, as you get to know the story, your motivation decreases, right? With games like Virtua Fighter and Virtua Striker, even after half a year after their release, their sales are still strong. But with RPG, after release, the stories are revealed in magazines and so on, so their sales will be determined in the 3 weeks after their release. So what I think would be great to make it possible is a game like Little Computer People, something like raising a goldfish in a goldfish bowl. I think that will make for a game you want to play again and again. Not one you will stop playing after finding out the story. I think no one will stop you playing after the story. It's just a bit of a mistranslation. I've read it very literally there. And there's a photo here of Little Computer People, which was released for the Apple II in 1985. That's interesting. You observe humans and raise humans. It's like it's the early version of The Sims. There you go.
Yeah. Well, there's a kitchen there and a bedroom, bathroom. Some of this could have been inspiration behind the Hazuki residence, perhaps, but it's neat actually that he says it like that. So if you do think of like an RPG, maybe something like Grandia or Panzer Dragoon Saga or something, it's like a start, a middle, and an end, and then you replay the game and it's the same start, middle, and an end. Whereas Yu Suzuki sort of suggesting here that with Shenmue, he wants, and he actually achieved this, multiple playthroughs, you're discovering new things. So even if someone spoils the end of the game in a magazine, the journey for each individual has been slightly different, and then the next time you play it, it's slightly different, and then you'll get that cutscene when they're zooming the park, or she rings you at home on the phone. These things in each playthrough, sort of like the narrative changes very slightly. I know like there's still a start, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
But the journey actually can be slightly different depending on how the player plays the game, and potentially that is what Yu Suzuki's sort of suggesting here, that this is a game that you're not just going to stick around and after 3 weeks you're done with. This is going to be a game that, Matt, you're going to play for 25 years and still find enjoyment out of it.
Well, that's it, and that's the crazy thing. It's very much how has he described it. People are finding things all the time in Shenmue that have been hidden to the sands of time for as long as possible. So he's pretty much delivered on that, hasn't he, in fairness to him?
Genius, really. Secret 5. The secret of the amazing graphics is in the custom tool. So an astonishing video clip from Shenmue shows a scene of petals drifting from blossoms in full bloom, changing its appearance with every second as it is combined with changes in the weather conditions. We sense its potential and wonderment at the fact that this vivid scene, which doesn't feel strange even as a movie, is rendered in real time. What's more, it's said to be produced on an actual Dreamcast console, so our amazement grows at an accelerating rate. So then, where on earth could the secret of these graphics lie?
He comes back to say, I wouldn't exactly call it a secret, but we're making use of a special tool. But it's an engine that we have tuned tightly specifically for making Shenmue. Normally there are things called libraries, but libraries are fundamentally built to be all-purpose and to handle anything. But what we're using is a customized tool that just has to be able to make Shenmue. And so we avoid calling it a library since we specialize the tool to make it optimal for making Shenmue. Therefore, some people ask to be given the Shenmue engine. There's probably not much point in that. Even if you are given it, it may not even run.
See, that's interesting because there is an advertisement that I've got that's sort of advertising the Shenmue engine. That I forget what it's called. Is it like what is it called? It's something soft, I think, is the name of the software.
I
can't remember off the top of my head, but essentially, I think there was a massive sort of fee involved with this particular engine or whatever, but essentially other game companies, if they wanted to, could have licensed out the engine that Shenmue used and make their own game with this engine, which I don't think anyone ever did.
No,
otherwise we would have known about it, right?
I don't think they ever did, but it's very... They did intend for that to happen. I know internally at Sega as well, they were intending for more teams to use the Shenmue engine to make things. So I think they also hoped it would recoup some of its costs that way, but clearly it didn't.
No. So I've just brought the actual leaflet image up here that I've got. So it's Soft Image was the name of the software.
Okay.
And there's different packages actually. So there's Soft Image 3D Extreme plus the Shenmue plugin, which is apparently 900,000 yen.
Ooh.
Which we know is probably about $5,000.
Yes.
Currently. And there's also the sort of the base version, Soft Image 3D Base plus the Shenmue plugin, which is 650,000. So a lot of money, but if we could go back in time again, it's something that perhaps Shenmue fans would like to purchase, because then essentially you've got the actual engine that it was built on, the Shenmue plugin, and someone like George Kitchen, for example, who's sort of taking and adapting Shenmue into Unity. He could just straight out use the original engine, and I don't know if it'd be overly complicated or what, but
I don't know. I think back in those days they were hoping for it to sort of be like, it clearly wasn't it? They were looking to license it out across multiple platforms, I don't know, but obviously I think it was highly tuned to Dreamcast as well, so they may have had issues with that potentially.
Yeah, you might need like one of the Dreamcast dev kit things as well, potentially, to run the software on. Just interesting.
Cool, though. Very cool.
Yeah, something to think about, guys. So it says, so the secret of the awe-inspiring graphics of Shenmue is in a super customized specialized tool. So then we've got some screenshots here. The magic of expressing an ever-changing world. This is thanks to the power of the software. And I will mention, actually, the Blossom. Obviously, that wasn't actually in the final game, at least this scene where it's like a park filled with cherry blossoms. But something that amazed me at the time, if you progress the date through to the end of March, early April, the Hazuki tree actually blooms, which is insane. So that is the sort of the cherry blossom season in Japan.
Yeah,
I mean, it should be no-brainer, really, but it still blows your mind that Shenmue went through those details. You've not just got this meteorological weather that they studied and utilised in Shenmue, that each day is the actual weather that was for that day in Yokosuka, Japan, which is insane. But then obviously you've got the seasonal changes, Santa comes out at Christmas, and then here the blossom blooms on the cherry tree at the Hazuki Dojo, which is just mental. I don't, a date and a time that no one realistically is ever going to get to.
And they
but it's a thing that's in the game, yeah. It's just mad. So it says, for Shenmue, the emotional state of the player was simulated by creating an emotional chart. This supplemented the scenarios, which were adjusted multiple times. So there's a document there, actually. So the emotional state of the player was simulated by creating an emotion chart. It's interesting, isn't it? So that's probably like the sort of the depression at the start.
Yeah, and like the heights of the fights or something like. It's very. I'd love to see that and what sort of research went into that and what they were looking at in terms of because that must become, I'm guessing, from player tests or something that made that happen.
I don't know, a therapist or something might have come in and said
maybe
what a typical person's emotions are after sort of like a life-changing thing like your dad dying or whatever, you know.
Nothing would surprise me with Shenmue, quite frankly.
Obviously they went through insane levels of detail to try and capture a realistic world, which, you know, they really did. And then the final caption here for the screenshot, it says, a nerve-wracking plank crossing inside an abandoned building. We know that all too well, guys. The reality of the setting that is built is amplified through its creative implementation.
Yeah, and we know what happens there. And also, why is Ren down there and not getting the lift?
That's true, actually. So that is an old screenshot, isn't it?
That's a very old screenshot. Yeah, so... but then it would have deprived us of the scene at the top of Ghost Hall building.
You reckon that's Ren following him?
Possibly.
Or is it a very early Yellowhead building, actually?
Possibly, could be as well, yeah.
There is a couple of scenes, isn't there, where Ren is nearby. In fact, he does the plank sequence, doesn't he? In one of them.
Yeah, he does. He goes first, doesn't he?
Yeah. So potentially it could be an early version of that. Right, let's move into Secret 6 now. So what do you think about the rival, the Final Fantasy series? So next we tried putting a slightly mean question to him being Yu Suzuki. What does Yu Suzuki think about the TV commercials for Final Fantasy VIII that are being shown frequently on TV right now? In response, Yu-san initially replies...
It's very typical of the development here. I haven't been home very often, so I haven't seen the commercials yet.
But he was sleeping in the office, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I think a lot of them were, by the sounds of it. But goes on to add, I saw the Final Fantasy VIII trailer in front of Square's booth at Tokyo Game Show last year, and to be honest, I thought it was wonderful. Speaking seriously, even if you went to Hollywood, you'd be hard-pressed to make a movie that would top it. So he's quite complimentary.
There was footage. They were in a Sega development office, weren't they? And he sat there smoking. And I'm sure they were watching Final Fantasy 7, potentially, not 8. Was it 7 they were watching on the screen? Can you remember?
I think so.
So at the time, they wanted to make a game better than 7, and then maybe 8's trailer has just been announced at this point. Well, it said Tokyo Game Show last year, so
98 that would have been, wouldn't it?
So probably like July is that Tokyo Game Show? July-ish? August?
Around, it might have been slightly, I think, something like that, wasn't it? Because it's always held around between September, October time now, but I thought it was always earlier in the year back then.
Okay,
but I could be
maybe
wrong.
So he says, that's right, Yu Suzuki expresses respect for Square's Hironobu Sakaguchi.
Very good.
The quality and presentation of the CG and his abilities as a producer who commands a staff of several hundred people. However, after giving recognition to this, he says the following.
He says, for example, whether it be Disney's Toy Story or Square, in order to produce that movie, it takes around 6 hours of ray tracing and rendering per frame. An image is displayed for 1/60th of a second.
Interesting, he's saying ray tracing then.
Yeah, I think that's a very different use of the term to what we know it to be now, I guess. It would probably be difficult to produce the work rendered in real time like Shenmue does, in which case I'd say where we hold our own is inside a game. The way in which the graphics in Shenmue come alive under real-time operation, not merely being shown in scenes. He's throwing a bit of shade here, I think. Of course, if we were also able to spend 4 or 5 hours rendering one frame, we could show you an exceptionally high level of graphics. However, what I'm trying to do with Shenmue is different. I don't think the two should be compared.
Interesting.
Bit of shade there, throwing a bit of shade.
They say that makes sense. So moving into Secret 7, advances in hardware and software. How many discs will Shenmue have? So this is an interesting one to think of at the start of 1999. Let's see what he says. So mixed in with talking about Final Fantasy VIII, Yu-san brings up a couple of topics. So how many discs Shenmue will have, and the point that Shenmue's graphics were achieved not because of advances in hardware, but by the level of software pursued and achieved by his staff. This is something that, as a journalist, also I want to say there's a somewhat mistaken belief that Yu Suzuki's works are amazing because the hardware is amazing. In fact, below the surface, it's thanks to the level of the software created through blood, sweat and tears that results in these matchless graphics. This is something I really want everyone to comprehend. Yu Suzuki is not a hardware person, but without a doubt a software person.
He is, and I think to sort of maybe not to disprove that, but I think he was heavily involved in some of the design of the Dreamcast, and at least was asked what should be in it at the time. So he does have a hardware background, but he's very much ingrained in software and coding and things like that. Yeah. But he comes back to say, for example, to make Shenmue with conventional technologies, I'd say it would exceed 100 discs, and then he laughs a lot. That's insane. Imagine if it was on floppy disks. Oh God.
Oh, dude.
Few thousand there.
Yeah.
Even given that the Dreamcast GD-ROMs are double density, there'd be no way for it to all fit in. For now, I think one disc per chapter would be ideal, but we're putting it in ceaseless efforts on a daily basis on the software side to try and achieve that. I'd like people to be aware, even if only an inkling of that. And that talks, I think they then obviously later on talk about the compression, don't they, and how they achieve that in later interviews, but it was insane how they managed to get it to fit.
See, I'm really wondering, though, at the start of 99, what is Shenmue like? Because he's saying here, I think one disc per chapter would be ideal. And we know from his graphs that Shenmue 1 is just the first chapter. So at this point, was Shenmue only one chapter? I don't know, man. Honestly, they could have... You know how they were knocking games out the park in those days? Like, you're talking... Games were releasing, every year, weren't they really? Like, from the same series, like your Sonic's 1991, Sonic 1, 92, Sonic 2, 93, Sonic 3. There isn't like a 4 to 5 year cycle. Despite Shenmue being crazy at the time, and like you've said in the past, Matt, like this sort of the first AAA game where they sort of did take 4 years to make it, it still feels to me like at the start of 1999, it might be that Shenmue 1 is a fraction of the size that it ended up being, and what they envisioned for Shenmue to be could have been this combination with the Shenmue 2 side of things, and then the amount of people that are working on it, and then they split it off and focused on Shenmue 1 more, and we got essentially 3 discs for this first chapter. I don't know. I'd love to sort of get a more realistic idea. I suppose that would be based on, like, if you discovered a prototype build of Shenmue from the start of 99, then that would really sort of enhance where the state of the game is at the moment. If perhaps it could just be like, it wouldn't be one disc, but it probably would be split into multiple discs. But how insane would it be that if you're playing the prototype build of Shenmue 1, all of a sudden it goes into Shenmue 2, and it's like, it was just one big package.
I mean, it's still distinctly possible. I know when you look at the betas that are out there, there's one like June 1999 is the most recent one, or the oldest one that we're aware of that's out there at the moment, and that is 3 discs. That game is 3 discs and very much complete. And I think that was the one Laurent released very recently. So
there wouldn't be enough time, really, would there?
I wouldn't have thought so. I think at this point there's almost like maybe, I don't want to use the word conflict, it's the wrong word, but there's probably a bit of pressure that Yu Suzuki wants to continue to make this thing insane.
Yeah.
But Sega are now like, we need to get this out. This needs to get out the door. But I guess this is where, having breaking a lot of ground, it's very, very hard to project plan something you've never done before.
True.
And it's never been done before. So I can see that argument to it, but I can also understand why Sega were like, no, we need to get this out, and that's why Nagoshi was brought in to go, quite frankly, this is brilliant, but it needs to be out the bloody door now, because they've missed how many release dates at this point in time. So I think there's that trade-off there with it, and that pressure. And I think, certainly in 1999, I would have thought Shenmue, as it was released, wasn't far off, but then they had to sort of hit the nail on the head and get it out. I think earlier than that, like 98, I think if there was a beta from 98 released somewhere, I think that possibility of it being very much smaller and then into Shenmue 2 probably isn't that far out of the realms of possibility.
I agree with you there, and actually there's some nice poignant words from the interview here that says, such are the unseen efforts of the Shenmue staff, their dreams lie ahead. So yeah, basically, I suppose no one knew what was in store at this point. And
no, quite.
So Secret 8, and it's the one that ends actually part 1 of the article. We are going to go into part 2, but just to wrap up part 1, Secret 8, the pursuit of reality, not realism.
So he says, with Shenmue 1, I want to achieve reality, not realism. What I'm trying to do differs from something that's real. Interesting.
So when the question came up of why Yokosuka was chosen as the first setting of the game, the conversation turns to a keyword that points to how Yu Suzuki approaches the way he makes his works.
Very good. And then and there's a photo there of Yokosuka as well, which is quite a nice photo. And then when you think of the realism stuff, they are all based on real locations.
Mm.
And even if you look at the anime, more recent stuff, you can see the one-to-one, like from the Dobita Street or the tunnel. That's very much like they've clearly done their work and research around realism. I think some people will argue back in the day Shenmue was going for that realistic look, whereas obviously Shenmue 3 didn't have the technology behind it or the money behind it to allow it to go and do that. So had to go off in a very different direction. So you can understand why almost back then it was mind-blowing, because it looked very realistic and very real, and they captured that feel of a real place.
And especially to us, Matt, we'd never experienced Japan before.
No,
and, this tiny little place called Yokosuka that was like completely alien to us, which is why I think so many of us, like Shenmue fans, sort of resonated with this game, because it gave us a slice of someone else's life, like someone else's completely different life. It's not just, you're walking into Boots and picking up, a bottle of Coke or something. This is like, well, probably not the right sort of metaphor to go with there, because Ryo Hazuki can pick up a can of Coke from a vending machine, but just, you know what I'm trying to say. It's like a completely different life, completely different world. And it was something that we'd never experienced before, and especially in the game was such a mind-blowing experience that no one at that time had experienced anything like it. And obviously the realistic locations on top of that, added to that.
No, quite. And then he goes on to say, I think if you choose somewhere like Kyoto or Tokyo as a setting, for example, then the smallest thing can cause a feeling that something is really off. And so even for the main setting of China, we created Kowloon with a form resembling a fortress, because that gives more of a feeling of tension as you venture inside. Very accurate as well, in my opinion. Therefore, I'm not looking to replicate something real, but rather to create a reality. So that, again, sort of goes on this whole based off of real locations, but with their own artistic take on it, which I think is absolutely fair. He then goes on to say, also, after speaking with people like Hiroshi Fujioka, who, note from Switch, is the Japanese actor who voices Iwao Hazuki, and also has a cameo in Shenmue, advertising an energy drink.
It's the Sagata Sanshiro guy as well, isn't it, that guy?
Yeah, very, very prominent in Dreams of Saturn 2, if you haven't played that. I think that people from Japan who are recognised around the world aren't people who have thrown Japan away, but rather people who have kept a firm grasp of Japan within them. So with this game too, I wanted to make Japan the departure point. And for the times I want to spotlight Japan, Yokosuka, not Kyoto or Kamakura, it is a perfect fit.
See, he's very fond of Kamakura, actually. Location-wise, which isn't too far away from Yokosuka, so he's probably, I'm assuming he would have visited Yokosuka at this point as well, but maybe map-wise, location-wise, he's very familiar with the area of Tokyo, and travels to Kamakura quite often, which is like quite close to Yokohama, and Yokosuka's sort of the next city next to it almost. It's like very, very close, so yeah, for him, perfect fit.
And then he goes on to say, I had the feeling that would allow me to properly express the main character of Ryo and the essence of the true Japanese man. And being a naval port originally, it's full of interesting people and shops.
And he's probably thinking ahead, how is the character going to get from Japan to China? Or Hong Kong in this case. Sort of being close to the area where you can actually get a boat to Hong Kong. And I think you can actually still do it today. It's just... I do recall a blog post from Switch that it's possible to get a ship from Yokosuka to Hong Kong. It's just perhaps not so often. It's not like there's one a day. I think it might be like one every few months or something. I don't know. I'd have to dig that article out as well. But yeah,
that'd be a good one to look at.
It says charm that is derived from reality. We're sure to see this kind of charm in the game itself. So yeah, really interesting. Actually, I'm quite enjoying going through this interview so far, but we are going to have a quick musical break, sort of catch our breath a little bit. We've done quite a lot of talking. So I've got an original piece of music from Richard Cartlidge here, who does some amazing Shenmue pieces and recreations of Shenmue music. Definitely check out Richard's work over on his YouTube channel. But this piece is his latest piece, and it's called Flurries. Okay, welcome back. That was a piece of music from Richard Cartlidge entitled Flurries. So let's move into part 2 of this 15 Secrets with Yu Suzuki. We left off with Secret 8 and we're moving into Secret 9. So it says, Secret 9, the mystery of the title Shenmue. So this be interesting. A question was sprung that got to the very heart of things. So what is the origin of the title Shenmue? However, it would seem that this conceals a secret relating to the theme of the game, and it's still a secret.
So then he goes on to say, although I may not be able to keep it to myself and give the game away before then, and he laughs, right now I plan to talk about that in a year's time from now. Also, the story aspect is all described in the poem-like part that's on the Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle Special Disc, so I probably won't give away any more details than that and switch notes that that's the Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle Special Disc with a GD-ROM that accompanied that game, and essentially feels it's an updated version of Virtua Fighter, and it contains the Project Berkeley bonus disc, the codename for Shenmue Project during the early days of development, and the poem that Yu Suzuki refers to can be viewed. And then Switch has got it transcribed here by Rakeem and Q of Shenmue Dojo from back in the day as well, and it's on the blue trifold. Is it on the pamphlet? Yes, it's on the pamphlet as well. The blue one.
What I'll do for this then, I won't read this out, because I may have even read this out last time, but I'm going to find a nice AI voice to read this out to you guys and add a bit of enchanting music behind, just so you can get a good feel of what this original Project Berkeley poem that apparently comprises the sort of the main themes of Shenmue. Have a little listen to this.
An adventure begins. A boy thrown into the depths of deep despair. Sadness wells up from inside the boy like boundless dark waters, washing everything away. Sadness, heart. Before long, this sadness will become a swelling anger. The trembling soul of this young boy will face a single decision. A vow. He will make an oath to himself and then decide, setting off on a journey heading west. The boy set off to an as-yet unseen, far-off foreign land. Hope rushes all throughout his body, becoming just like a heartbeat, at times swelling up to a head, and at others almost losing sight and beginning to taper off. All his memories, everything he's experienced, pulled into a chaotic world. An unknown world trying to suck him in with maelstrom force, his spirit once again bound by angst. Anxiety, expectations, dreams, hope. A boy controlled like a puppet. Betrayal, mind, body, a vow. Courage, pride, love. Everything begins to fade. An encounter with a mysterious young girl. She arrived suddenly, but with tenderness, tranquility. The endless lands embracing the two of them. Tenderness is broad, yet deep. A new courage is budding. The ones you love, a moment of fate, a battle of life and death. Body, soul, stillness, movement, light, dark, sunlight, shadows, wisdom, skill, friends, enemies. Erupting into space and time, discover the meaning of pride, take hold of doubtless courage. Companions, friends and love. It was all over, or so it seemed. There is no such thing as the future, an empty world preventing the soul from breathing. Love seemed to flicker, something little by little flowing into a frozen heart. Love, big, deep, filling the entire body. You are not alone anymore. You feel a new power, a new sense of courage. You are not alone anymore. Friends, those you love. A brand new journey begins.
All right. Well, It says the poem appears to describe Ryo's entire adventure from his journey to China to his encounter with Shenmue and even future events to come in the series. I think that's Switch's little note at the end there. So yeah. Did we spoil the ending of the game for you there?
I think we've just ruined Shenmue, and it was all Goro's fault.
Is that what you took from that poem?
Yeah, it's all Goro's fault.
Yeah. Let's move into Secret 10 now. So what new information can be expected at the Tokyo Game Show? So now that the excitement of the premiere is over, what sort of things can we expect to see at the next public event, which is the Tokyo Game Show, which is set, like you said, Matt, earlier in the year here in March the 19th.
So he said, I'd like to have something there that you can play a bit, although it might be something simple. I think people attending the game show would like to try some hands-on play. Like I said before, with this game, I don't want to have any regrets. A spring release might be a little tricky.
Right. So at the time, I think the game was set or scheduled for, is it August?
I believe so, because that's the one they hit Watch Shenmue, wasn't it? Because it's almost like we're sorry, but here's a demo.
So it's very interesting that the release date is very much movable at this point.
Very movable.
Yeah. So that moves us into Secret 11. So we're rattling through these secrets now. So the pursuit of breadth and the pursuit of depth. So amongst the questions asked was the following. So if the setting is too expansive, won't the fun of the game be diluted? And Yu Suzuki had a clear response to that. He knows a way to overcome it.
Now, this I find really interesting because you look at games these days and how big they are and how empty they are. That was being discussed way back in 1999, that worry, which I think the foresight around that is astonishing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll come on to it now. It says that even if the play area becomes broader, I don't think it diminishes how fun the game is. My belief is that the breadth of the playfield has nothing to do with how fun the game is. One thing to be careful of in that respect is that density will reduce as the area increases. But a game that uses its area well will feel good because of that. I think a game that uses breadth well will be just like a game that uses depth well and will be fun, and he laughs at that. Which, again, I think Shenmue does very, very well. The scope of the maps, when you compare them to modern times, is not very big. But certainly the original two games, and to a point Shenmue 3, there's a level of detail in there that games even now don't do.
Yeah.
So I think they got that balance right for me.
Yeah, I agree.
The world felt alive, it felt purposeful. Whereas you look at some of the modern games now, probably outside of Red Dead Redemption 2, which its world actually feels really, really good. Many games don't give you that feel for me, and Shenmue does. I think, maybe Cyberpunk actually. That the new update to that as well, I think, brought that world alive. But there aren't many games that I think come close for me than Shenmue.
Yeah, well, even Shenmue 2, I mean, how you are talking the breadth in terms of that game now, it's massive compared to the areas in Shenmue 1. But even the areas in Shenmue 2, it feels like the majority of that sort of space has a purpose. If only even for sort of setting the scene that you're sort of in this brand new city, this huge thing, you don't really know where to go. There's a lot of like roads leading to different areas of this sort of Wanchai city, different sections, the electronics district, sort of the antiques district kind of thing going on here. So there's a lot of elements to the city, yet it still feels like everywhere has a purpose. As you're looking around in each of the areas, it's distinct is probably the right word to use. It's not just a copy and paste jobby to make the world bigger. It's every little area in there has its own sort of purpose, and even story-based elements as well. Like you're talking to Quicksang, Janmin in Southcore Main Quarter, and then obviously Shoeing's in Wise Men's up to Scarlet Hills.
Yeah.
You meet Joy in Aberdeen. So each sort of area does hold a use. It's not just there for sort of extra padding. Yeah, it's essentially what I'm saying there. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, so I do sort of agree with that. So even if Yu Suzuki's thinking about how big Shenmue 2 is, it even comes back to kind of what he's saying now, that he's, as long as it uses that area to its sort of fullest, it'll still be a fun game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, is essentially which I kind of wish games today, or more games today rather, because there is still some games that sort of do that, but I wish more games would think about sort of the scale of the game and not just be mad huge for the sake of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Apparently, it says Yu Suzuki calls himself an extreme believer in balance. That this belief is not mistaken is something that will no doubt come to be proven with this game. Moving into Secret 12 now, so about the character motion and modelling. So Yu-san had some fascinating and surprising words to say about the acting performance and motion capture for the characters.
So it says, normally for something like motion capture, a certain time frame is decided and it's taken over a condensed period. But for Shenmue, it's something that's going on all the time. And I can probably see where some of the money went. Firstly, the script is made and the actors read it and act the scene out normally. Then, once the okay is given on the acting, we carry out the motion capture. After that, we record the sound. In the beginning, I was planning on reusing some motions, but for scenes where they weren't taken, started to look inferior by comparison. So we're doing motion capture every week, and each week new data is generated. Right now, it's a battle with compressing the data, and next I want to add various facial expressions as well.
Wow.
So that's like a lot of games these days, to cut down the workflow, will reuse animations and motions. It makes a lot of sense. Back then, obviously, Shenmue decided we're not going to do that. We're going to capture absolutely everything.
Well, one thing that sticks out in my mind, just thinking out loud, is in Shenmue the anime, I think it was Sun that originally pointed it out, but one of the moves that happens in the first episode is the same move that happens in the final episode, right? Like they just sort of reuse the exact same animation. So that is where I'm guessing like budget was starting to thingy, and once you notice that,
you can't unsee it.
Like what Yu Suzuki's saying, it's kind of inferior because you can't unsee it. You're seeing that they're just reusing the same elements again. But yeah, thinking out loud, I never really thought about it like that. But every animation or motion capture in this case in Shenmue is unique, which is insane.
Mad.
Obviously, apart from opening a door.
Yeah.
But even then, there was an article we read, I think it was with Stu.
Yes.
When we were talking about different types of doors.
Like different motions to open
the handle.
It's mad, isn't it? They could have just used the same door for everything, but they didn't. They just they had like 10 different motions for 10 different doors.
But that's what sells the world to you, isn't it? That's what made this a believable world, because you're not just seeing a copy and paste job, you're seeing just the whole game is just original from start to finish almost, and very authentic.
Indeed.
We'll undoubtedly be able to check out the results of that within the game, they say. And then they move into Secret 13, which is QTE's Laserdisc games, which I know this was really interesting when I first read this article. Just something I remember reading about the Laserdisc games.
He goes on to say that he actually worked, when he first started out at Sega, I worked on 3 or so Laserdisc games. There's a note from Switch here that says, Yu Suzuki joined Sega in 1983, and the company released some of the world's first games to use Laserdisc hardware that year, and the following, namely 2 space games, Astronbout and Star Blazer, known as Galaxy Ranger overseas, and also a racing game, GP World. Another animated space adventure called Ulbigas, also known as Cybernaut, was cancelled before release.
It's interesting, because if you actually look at some of the credits based with some of those games, Yu Suzuki's name's there, so it's really interesting. Some of those games I would like to dig out at some point. I remember when I first read this article, actually, this is going back, when was this written? It was like 2018 or something, I think, Switch translated this, I think it was. And I remember when I read it then, this stuck out to me, and I was on eBay looking for both Laserdisc players and these Sega Japanese Laserdisc games I just would love to actually play them. They're probably terrible. I don't know. They're probably like motion capture, like FMV, sort of like your Sega CD games, because that's what they were, kind of like Dragon's Lair, those type of games back in those days. I feel like, it's either Astronbout, Star Blazer, or both of them, or maybe even all of these, because they're all sort of like space adventure games. I feel like I was watching footage of one of them on YouTube, and it was sort of like a shmup game.
Okay.
Which looked really cool. So sort of like maybe CD video as the background, and then just like a little 3D spaceship on top of that footage, if you know what I mean. If anyone's played these Laserdisc games, let us know, guys, because I'm really intrigued. I would at some point love to pick these up and actually play them firsthand, but I don't know if there's an emulator for these.
There probably is somewhere. I'd have to dig around.
It says, to the suggestion that some people are saying QTEs or QuickTime events are like those Laserdisc-based games, Yu Suzuki had some unexpected words.
He said, well, as someone who used to make Laserdisc games, take it from me that it will be fine, and he laughs. They are of different quality to Laserdisc games. To take an example, the only difference between a Laserdisc game and Virtua Fighter is a difference in the time durations. With Virtua Fighter, for example, after you push the punch button, the next 10 frames, 1/6 of a second, are automatic. In the same way, with a Laserdisc game too, after you make your decision, the pictures are displayed for 5 seconds automatically. Difference between the two is in the fact that difference in the amount of unplayable time, being either 10 frames or 5 seconds. I can understand wanting to make the comparison with QTEs, but the actual sense of playing is different. QTEs are not a Laserdisc game with faster decisions, but maybe more like Virtua Fighter that's been slowed down a little. That sounds like something where a picture may be worth 1,000 words. And then sort of going down here, you've got quite a number of like early QTE sequences, like the planks, the sign. Going down, you've got what could be, it's the Ren chase, early doors of the Ren chase, where he's like chucking boxes and things down the stairs at him as well. So there's quite a number there. Again, seeing some of this footage and how old some of that is compared to obviously the final release is fascinating in itself.
Mm-hmm. So some captions. We've got the QTEs also include scenes like this. So you move forward, pressing the D-pad in the opposite direction to your wobbling essential balance. There are a wealth of situations not found in Laserdisc games. So it is interesting he makes that comparison, because obviously a lot of people do tout games like Dragon's Lair as being like the originators of QTEs, aren't they? And I know Yu Suzuki with Shenmue sort of coined the term QTE more so than it being like the first iteration of a QTE, but Yu Suzuki's QTEs certainly defined
gaming in some respects, didn't they? And what's in games now?
What is possible with a QTE, essentially. And it says, as the name suggests, rapid decisions are required. Won't be able to help wanting to view the failure of QTEs, so will a retry be possible? So, of course, we know that there's a lot of retries available, especially in Shenmue 3. They want you to fail them, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So, Secret 14 now. So, the first drop of the Amazon, and I'm assuming they're not talking about Amazon.com.
Well, you'd hope not. The first drop of the Amazon, these are the words that Yu Suzuki uses a lot recently. It's a metaphor for bringing about a momentum shift to the industry. A new wave brought by that single drop. The Taikan, hands-on or ride-on style games that started with Hang On, the 3D fighting games that started with Virtua Fighter, Yu Suzuki's creations, always been groundbreaking for the game industry, and those words reflect his stance toward games creation. What he is looking to do is not to rehash conventional games, but is to pioneer new markets born through new concepts. I feel like, a bit like I did with Virtua Fighter 1, it would be great if this game can create a new trend in gaming history.
Wow. It says the first stirrings have already started. And do you think Shenmue created a new trend in gaming history, Matt?
I think it may have just had a slight contribution to it.
Yep. And moving into the final secret now, so Secret 15. After gaining strength with Shenmue, the next game will be a fantasy, so keep friends, those you love, close to you. Yu Suzuki has the following to say about the main theme.
And what he has to say is it could be this, in a word, a catchphrase with no philosophy whatsoever. In fact, the very attempt to simulate the real world may be a bit underwhelming or feel a bit underwhelming. However, through making something based on a close study of things in the real world, I have come to a good understanding of how difficult it is to make something that will be popular around the world. But in order to grow myself, I first draw upon the real world and see how far I can go. In a way, I feel like I've chosen somewhere that has nowhere to hide. Very true. To be honest, I love Hayao Miyazaki's animated film Castle in the Sky. The story of the boy who goes on a trip with a medieval sword in a magical world is my favourite, and he laughs. And there's a little image there of the film Castle in the Sky. Everyone may think I like simulations of the real world, but I'd like to do a fantasy. So that's why I have games like Space Harrier and later on Air Twister. If I'm able to grow myself by making Shenmue with its real-world theme that allows for no refuge, then thereby gain a touch of confidence, then next I would really like to make a fantasy work.
Interesting. So is he saying there he wants the game after Shenmue to be a fantasy, or he wants...
I think he wanted to do like a fantasy game afterwards, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if he was suggesting that Shenmue was that game.
Possibly.
But it does say next I would like to make a fantasy work, so I'm just trying to think, what did Yu Suzuki do directly after Shenmue and Shenmue 2? Was it Virtua Fighter 4? Or was
Virtua
it...
Fighter did some outruns, didn't he, as well in that time?
But not a fantasy game that I'm aware of.
No, not a big fantasy game. But there we go. I thought overall he didn't, but I think that's quite a nice ending, isn't it? Obviously, he's talking about what he'd like to do in the future.
Exactly, and things always change, don't they, with Yu Suzuki? We've known in the past him say he wants to do this next and that next, and then flips it on its head, and we get Steel Paws, for example, which is like a game that probably no one expected. I don't know. But interesting. Very, very good. So it says, these words from Yusan caught us totally by surprise. It appears he still has many dreams that he wishes to fulfill. And I still think he has many dreams that he wants to fulfill as well in 2025. Hopefully some of that he can fulfill with Steel Paws and some other projects that he's working on. And hopefully his overarching dream is Shenmue 4 and 5. Potentially we'll get there. But yeah, so Yusan related that he was interested to read a message on the BBS boards saying that the snow in Hokkaido, which is the northern region of Japan, is quite different. So yeah, very, very good. Just reading some of the comments actually at the bottom of this post. So someone says, Castle in the Sky is what made me a fan of Studio Ghibli. Thanks for the translation switch. So yeah, Castle in the Sky, I'll have to check that out. I think I have seen it, but I can't quite remember the premise of it. But yeah, guys, are you a fan of Studio Ghibli films as well? I think you said that your wife was at one point, right, Matt?
Yeah, she is massively into Studio Ghibli films.
Yeah, we've got a box set of them as well, but definitely would like to check out a few more of these. Castle in the Sky might be on my list there, seeing as though it's one of Yu Suzuki's favourite films. So hopefully you enjoyed that main discussion topic there, guys. We've learned some interesting things there, sort of in that period between the Shenmue premiere and Shenmue's actual release. So hopefully we'll discover some more bits and bobs to look into in the future that sort of follow on from this. I'll see if I can dig out some articles or something, maybe, I don't know, just prior to the release of Shenmue that we can go into next. And not that I'm trying to find something to do chronologically, if you know what I mean, Matt, but just something to keep the momentum flowing here up to Shenmue's release, I guess. I'm sure there's something.
Yeah, I think we'll just see how it goes. Right,
so let's have a little music break now, guys. And then after, I haven't got a quiz for you this week, Matt, but we're going to do something a little bit different just to wrap up the show. So before we get to that, let's hear a little piece of music from Dreams of Saturn 2.0 again. Another piece composed by Richard Cartlidge. This is Surveying the Harbour. welcome back. That was Surveying the Harbour, a piece of music from Richard Cartlidge for DOS 2.0 again. Definitely download that game and check it out. Fantastic piece of music there from Richard. So, Matt, I thought, and we've sort of debated this idea in the past, haven't we? We've toyed with the thought of doing a sort of a tier list type of feature on. I don't know whether we're going to do it on a stream or a show or whatever.
Yeah, I think a stream.
Yeah. So rather than a quiz, this was actually popped into our Shenmue Dojo Discord channel in the community project section by Discord member Greyest, who has created a small tier list. He's called it the Shenmue Chapters / Locations tier list. He's basically took a few liberties here and chaptered out some of the parts of Shenmue 1, 2, and 3 to sort of create what we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chapters and sort of a bonus chapter here. It'll make sense when I talk about it in a moment. So he says, chapters from each Shenmue game so far. The entire first game is considered one chapter, since the entire story is in Yokosuka. It's got 2 separate ones for Shenmue 1, but
fine.
It's fine. So essentially there's 7 images here. There's one for Niawu, one for Bailu Village, one for Baisha, one for... Maybe he means the boat chapter, actually, thinking about it.
He might do.
I was thinking it was the harbour. What would you rather do, the boat chapter or the harbour then, Matt?
I'd do the harbour because it's game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually something that we can talk about. Okay. Wanchai or Hong Kong and Kowloon, and then what I assume he probably did mean is Yokosuka then, but we'll do it as everything up to and including sort of the buzz journey to the harbour then. Just to have an extra sort of thing to talk about there, I guess.
Okay.
Right, so tier-wise, Matt, I don't know if you've done one of these things before, but obviously we've got an S rank, an A rank, a B rank, a C rank, a D rank, and then in this particular tier list there's one called Unknown, which I guess maybe you could instantly put Baisha in the unknown tier because it's an unknown entity, I don't know. Or we can talk about how potentially it could have gone, or maybe if it's still going to happen in the future, how it could go, I don't know.
Let's see.
But essentially we're going to rank these Shenmue chapters into their categories on... We'll have to sort of come to some sort of a joint agreement, I guess, on where we want to rank them. And I just thought maybe we'll sort of discuss or rate them basically on either the story content that's involved in that particular chapter, and I'm doing sort of like finger quotations for chapters because obviously it's never really been completely known what is and what isn't a chapter, but essentially if you consider these 7 chapters, we'll rank them in story content and then maybe like the setting, the overall setting, vibes or whatever. So yeah, that I think hopefully we'll see how it goes. It might be shit. You might want to turn off now, guys, but we'll give it a little go. So if you're watching the video portion as well over on YouTube, you'll actually see the tier list in front of your eyes here, and we're going to create it right now, Matt. So do you want to start in chronological order then? So we'll start with the Yokosuka image, which is the sort of the hill in Sakuraoka. So I'm guessing, obviously, like I say, this is sort of like the first disc, and maybe even elements of disc 2, if you want to think of it like that, where you've got like you're buying the Hong Kong ticket. We'll include all of that. So up until the sort of the buzz journey and some of the Hong Kong elements there. So I guess the Dobuita, Yamanoshi, Sakuraoka, Hazuki Residence, those sort of areas there. So setting wise, in the whole Shenmue series, Matt, where do you think we should put that?
I would say at least an A.
At least an A.
Personally, I don't know if I can argue higher or not.
Would you not? See, I would probably argue as an S tier because it is the first experience we ever had with Shenmue. It's his home, essentially. That is his environment, if you want to consider it like that. So the harbour's sort of like outside of his home.
Yeah.
It's like a new location that he visits. But Yamanoshi, Sakuraoka, Dobuita, those are all people know who Ryo is. That is his home. So for me, setting-wise, I would put it in S tier.
I'm happy to.
It's a place that obviously, as fans, we want to actually go to in person. Like when we're talking in that interview there, he recreate that reality field, didn't he? So we want to feel the reality that we've experienced in the game. So it's always on people's bucket lists. And, you know, once you're there, you can actually, you get your Shenmue vibes when you're there in person. It's definitely a place that you have to visit. So I think setting-wise for me...
Let's S-rank it then.
S-rank it. So it might be an S-rank now, but if we think about the story content, does that deter from that S-rank a little bit lower, do you think, or not?
I mean, the opening section obviously is insane, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So that definitely pulls it up. And
so
you
got
get
the opening cutscene.
Yeah.
Talking about
and then you've got, I think, some nice sort of tidbits of the community in there as well, like the kitten. And then later on, you get the bits about the mirrors, obviously hidden cutscenes, the scenes with Nozomi. Yeah, I think if you did it on a purely, you know, like story-driven thing, I think it would be lower. But when you talk about the things around it that make the world, I think you can absolutely argue it's an S. Yeah,
well, that's true, because you've got like the old lady as well, just finding the Yamanotos. Stuff with Yamagishi-san. Even like I do quite like the section where you're buying the Hong Kong ticket, you know. It sort of adds that sort of reality aspect to it, where you're going into both of the travel agents and getting the brochures, and you can take them back to Fukusan. Like, you can actually open them in your inventory and look at these brochures. It sort of feels like you're actually doing that quest.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Does.
You're actually trying to buy a ticket to Hong Kong, and obviously you've got some chai stuff in there. Chai in the arcade. That is where the arcade is as well. That's your first sort of
very true
love from Shenmue. I'm happy to keep it an S. You know,
I am. Yeah,
it's probably not the most epic and, like you say, story driven like some of the later stuff in Shenmue 2 is, but in sort of setting the narrative on its journey, I think it does it really well.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
So let's move into the harbour section now, which, again, potentially by Grace, he probably is thinking of Chapter 2, the Cut Boat chapter. But we're going to just talk about the harbour, I would say, instead. So, obviously, we've been experiencing this quite heavily recently with Dreams of Saturn 2. A lot of harbour content there. And the harbour, for me, in terms of setting, I do really like, but I don't think I enjoy it as much as I do the Yokosuka side of things, if you want to think of Yokosuka as being Yamanoshi, Sakuragaoka, and Jabuta. I think the harbour maybe drags a little bit with the forklift. Like, I do really enjoy the jobs, but maybe like your fourth or fifth day, perhaps it does start to feel a bit like a drag. That's kind of story based that we're going to talk about in a moment, but setting wise, actually, maybe one of the I don't want to say the word bland. I was going to say like one of the blander areas, because it's still a lively sort of location. You've got people running around. There's some nice characters there with Hisaka-san and Mai. Goro, it's a fan favourite, of course. But yeah, and Mark, Tom's there as well.
You've got, I think,
Master
the introduction
Chang-Ri-san.
to it, like the intro is insane. Like that sweeping shot of the harbour, getting off the bus. I think that's really well presented and really, really well done. So that straight away always gets bonus points for me, and the music's brilliant. Interspersed with the story elements, obviously you meet Goro and that element of raiding warehouse number 8, which I was quite happy doing. You have all the Mad Angel stuff, which actually drives the story on quite nicely to that big sort of 70-man battle thing. But I do agree with you. I think the forklift job, A, it's a meme factory, and B, it does drag on a little bit, and I can get where that issue comes from. So, like, that's where I think it drags it down a little bit. For me, I'd be sat at a B or an A, but I'd be hard pressed to push for an A, I think.
I think if we're going to do this fairly, Because if it was me straight off the bat now, I'd probably put everything as an A or an S, just because we love Shenmue.
Yeah.
But objectively, based on possibly some of the bits that maybe don't click too much with people as well, like the forklift job, the manual labour side of that, and sort of the waiting around for cutscenes to happen, like especially after you finish your job, there's almost like a 2 to 3 hour period there where you're getting the same conversations from people, and you're sort of waiting for it to go dark, and sometimes like 8 p.m. to sort of trigger a cutscene. So setting wise, I'd probably put it as an A, but maybe some of those other elements bring it down to a B. But then if you're thinking about story wise, I mean, how epic is the end of the game with the 70-man battle and the motorbiking into the harbour and then the wish sequence out of it. Some of the Guizhang stuff as well is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that's where you end up at this toing and froing for it.
Yeah.
The story content is some of the best content in the game in terms of the action-driven elements of Shenmue, but the bits in between, I do think, drag it down.
And maybe the location for me isn't as exciting as some of the other locations.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to put it as a B. I probably would go maybe like a B+, like if there was an in-betweener.
Yeah, So let me place it in between. No, it doesn't.
No. Okay.
No, never mind.
We'll stick at a B for that, A, just to sort of be fair to the series.
Yeah.
As a whole. Right, so that brings us then to the Hong Kong portion, which is what we're going to refer to as Wan Chai here. So
yes.
I know, in particular, obviously Shenmue 2 is your personal favourite map.
It is.
I do really like Wan Chai. I prefer it. I'm going to say this straight away. I prefer Wan Chai over Kowloon.
Oh, that's controversial.
I just find sort of same sort of thing again with the harbour. There's some maybe a little bit more blender of a location. It's all sort of like dark buildings. Like, don't get me wrong, the story in Kowloon is incredible, especially the tail end, but we will get into the Kowloon section next. So going back to the Hong Kong portion then, for me, setting wise, probably is at least an A rank.
Yeah, definitely at least an A.
At least an A. It probably is on par with, if not better, in a sense, for the amount of content and the amount of areas than sort of the Shenmue 1, Yamanoshi, Sakuroka Dobrota thing that we've done as an S tier. It probably is above that, but then at the same time, for the reasons that we spoke about that, like the setting the scene, that's Ryo's home, etc., Hong Kong is a little bit lower than that for me, if you're thinking of it on those terms. So even though the area is arguably better, and you've got your Aberdeen, you've got your Green Market Quarter, and then all the quarters that come off that, and some of the side activities you can do there. There's probably like a wealth of areas there over Yamanoshi, Sakuroka, Dobrota, but for me, those have that nostalgic hit, that like iconic hit, that when I think of Shenmue, I think of those areas, whereas the Shenmue 2 stuff is not as... I'm struggling to come out with words. Like, I'm fond of it, but I'm not as fond of it as...
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
And I wonder if part of that is because of the way Hong Kong's presented. It's a foreign place, foreign country, and you're almost meant to feel a bit lost in it, I guess, as well. And it doesn't feel as homely or as iconic. But I also think with Shenmue 1, because it was our first, like you say, our first experience of that, I think it's always going to resonate that much harder. With Hong Kong, obviously, the opening's brilliant. You're coming in on the boat, absolutely fantastic. You have some brilliant cutscenes in there, like with meeting Ewing for the first time. When you're on Wong's boat and Waves of Morning Haze is playing, you've got that beautiful shot across the sea and everything as well, and all the boats. Story content-wise, it's good. It is good. I do think there are elements that possibly let it down a tiny bit. I don't mind carrying books. I quite find it therapeutic, but some people
books,
didn't.
actually, yeah.
Some people were quite critical of that a little bit as well. So there's that side to it. I know this happens in Kowloon, but you obviously have the money barrier issue as well. But again, we'd have to mark Kowloon down for that as well if we're going to mark Hong Kong down for that as well. I definitely think it's an A. I have no question with that. I don't quite know whether I could push it to an S, judging on what we've discussed.
I think I'm at an A, and story content wise, what brings it down for me is the whole Beverly Hills section. I'm really not too fond of that area, especially that bit where you're trying to find your way to Coolsey's den or hideout or whatever, and there's a lot of like those sort of fights that I hate in turn-based RPGs where you just walk into them and you know what I mean, like random
like random
type of things. There's a lot of those, and they seem to drag because of like the loading in, the sort of the cutscene chat and the cutscene out chat, and the first person aspect of fighting is a bit clunky around that area.
tough I think. I think
so. So for me, that area lets the rest of Wan Chai down for me. But what I will say, just before we move on, I do get some of those really nice Shenmue vibes that I get from the Shenmue 1 portion of stuff that I've spoken about quite a bit. When you're sort of sat in Ryo's hotel room and you're looking out the window, you can pull the window open and you're just sort of watching the NPCs walk around at the bottom. You got the cat meowing. There's just a nice sort of ambience to that I really, in particular, am fond of. And then again, a little bit later with Manmo Temple, there is sort of like another sort of bucket list location ambience that you kind of want to actually visit Manmo Temple in real life because of the game. It has got that sort of an iconic location that is somewhere that you can actually visit in person. So it does have that going for it, but again, like you said, Matt, I don't think you could go up to an S on it, and obviously it's definitely better than a B.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So we'll chuck that chapter as an A then.
Beautiful.
If you're happy with that.
Yeah.
Kowloon, maybe you want to take this first, Matt, and then sort of persuade me, because I'm probably at a B on Kowloon.
See, Kowloon for me is my favourite section of all the Shenmue series.
Wow.
It really is. It really is. I can take where you're coming from. I absolutely get it. I think it's a bit more linear in the way it's driven, in that it's very story heavy. In terms of story heavy content, it's probably the heaviest chapter in the entire series for me. And it's also the most action packed. You've got the cutscene with Lan Di on the roof.
Amazing.
You've got the raid of the Yellowhead building.
Amazing.
You've got the build up to all of that. You do have some tedium in it as well. I think following Yuan can be a little bit challenging at times. I was just about to say that.
On multiple playthroughs, that is kind of the one section of Kowloon that's a little bit like you don't want to do it.
No, it's a bit like, we're doing that again, but then you get some good cutscenes out of it and the rest of it. So that side of it's quite good. That. I take your point around the presentation of it. I think when you compare it to like Hong Kong, which feels a lot more colourful, and again, sort of Dabuita and the way it's presented, it does feel a lot grayer, darker. It feels, very different, I guess, in that sense. I can see where you're coming from that side of things. Looking at it as well, you can play arcade games there, but they are more missable, I guess, as well. Mm-hmm. It's very much story in Kowloon, and that's fine. And I think the setting lends itself quite well to it. I rank it personally an S because I think some of the content that happens in it is insane. But looking at it from every angle, you'd be looking at probably an A. And then people can argue over whether it's higher or not. I would argue it's higher based off the story content. I think it's so strong there that it would nail it for me. But I can take the other points that you would raise around what would pull it down as well.
See, if you're saying an S and I'm saying a B, then I feel like A is probably the happy medium.
Probably the fairest place
and
for
it
it to
probably
go.
is the fairest place for it to go. I do really like Kowloon. It is a breath of fresh air after Wanchai. You know, by the time you've come to the end of Wanchai, especially if you've been doing everything that the game has to offer, you kind of are potentially ready to move on to a new city. And on recent playthroughs, I have had a lot of fun in Kowloon. It's a place that isn't as memorable in my head as like some of the other locations. Like I sort of have to get my bearings a little bit, especially in some of the buildings, to know what's linked to what other building. So in terms of like that, it still kind of feels a little bit fresh, even though I've completed the game like 40 times. You know what I mean? It still has elements to it that I have to think about to know where to go in some certain cases. If I want to get to like the gold jewel room or whatever, I kind of have to double check what building it's in. You know, 1,000 White building, what floor's it in?
Yeah,
I don't know, 13th floor or 20th floor or something. It's like, it's not as, like I say, memorable in that sense. The way it looks, the way it's presented is amazing. Like that, like you say, that introduction scene with the sweeping camera around the building. Oh, like stunning. Like, again, another place I would absolutely love to go in real life if it still existed, despite what you've heard about the place at the time. Like, if that stuff was still going on today and it was still a thing, I'd still like to visit it, but I'd have to have like, we'd have to go as a group of people, I think, because it sounds a bit
20,
dodgy, yeah. But yeah, I do really love that. I love the ending, like you say, with the Donu fight on top of the Yellowhead building. The sky, the panning, the cinematography, the landing on the helicopter. I mean, story content wise, that is definitely the best of the series so far. But then some things, elements that we've spoken about, do really bring it down for me, like the Ghost Hall building section, the Yuan following. Some of the street fighting can be a little bit tedious as well. The music isn't as strong for me either. I feel like I hear that dum da da dum dum
yeah,
dum da da dum. You know, when you're actually going around doing the street fighting, there's a lot of like that. Isn't really the best music in the series, or the strongest music, I probably should say. And yeah, I guess you just sort of, like you said, it's a bit more linear at that point. Like, you don't feel as free to, I'll go off and, you know, speak to this person today and have a little wander around and, you know, do some mini games and stuff like that. It just feels like you kind of, at that point, you are just doing the story. So yeah, I could whittle on for another 5-10 minutes on Kowloon, I guess, but we'll probably just put a line under it and call it an A, yeah?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Which then leads us, and I noticed there's no Guilin section as such for Shenmue 2, but I suppose we can incorporate that into the Bailey Village screenshot that he's used here, which is essentially then going to feed into the first half of Shenmue 3, which for me, I see, if it was just the Shenmue 2 Guilin portion, I would be suggesting we put it as an S rank. I don't know how you feel about the Shenmue 2 portion of Guilin, Matt.
The Shenmue 2 portion of Guilin, I think, is ballsy. I've said it for years. I struggled with it when I was younger. I really struggled with it. I found it a bit tedious, if I'm brutally honest.
To be fair, I did when I was younger, yeah.
It was only when I was a bit older, I thought sort of early 20s, when I randomly went and played Shenmue again, and Shenmue 2 again. But I sat and played it, and I got it. The penny dropped for me on Guilin, on that Guilin section about what they were trying to do and why they were doing it. When you think of coming off of that massive ending in Kowloon,
yeah, have that calm after the storm,
that calm after the storm before you get punched in the face with the ending. But the gameplay element of it is very linear. It's on rails pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's 2.5 hours long. I can see how that puts people off, that portion of it. So that would drag it down to an A from my point of view, just because of that side of it, and I can understand where it comes from. So if we separated it out, I think it would be an A for the Shenmue 2 section. Then obviously coming to Shenmue 3, and I actually like Bailu Village in Shenmue 3. take the story content as it is, which isn't that fulsome or wholesome, whatever you want to call it. There are some nice tidbits in there, absolutely, but it isn't on the level of the previous games, and we know that. But there's something to be said about walking to Bailu Village from Shenhua's house, watching the sunrise, that orange glow as you're walking down. It might have been raining the night before, so you've got that glisten on the mud as you walk down, and you see your footprints going down to the village. And also, there is something to be said for the fact that sentimentally, we fucking played Bailu Village. We got to Bailu Village after all of that. I would put it as a B based on everything. You could probably B plus it with the Shenmue 2 section if we were putting it together. But I think story content drags it down massively. But the actual environment is stunning.
Yeah.
And I enjoy. I love my time in Bailu Village. It's my favorite section of Shenmue 3 without a doubt, and it's the strongest section of Shenmue 3 without a doubt as well.
Yeah, I would agree with you that it's the strongest section of Shenmue 3, and I feel like I have said it before, but I tend to prefer Niaoua for some reason just over it. Despite loving the Guilin section of Shenmue 2 so much, like if it was, like I say, if there was a Shenmue 2 icon here of Guilin, I would probably put it an S just because of how it makes me feel, the emotions it sort of provokes in me as like something that you can't experience in any other video game. I'm happy in that sentiment then to bring it down to an A, because I do get it's a 2-hour walking simulator aspect to it, despite like the absolute gold at the end with some of the story content at the end with the cliffhanger. But then moving into the Shenmue 3 version of Bailu Village, again, like you said, the environments are stunning, the setting is stunning, but what brings it down a little bit for me is what we've spoken about before, like the sort of non-rural-esque stuff, like the electric, the arcades, the oven, the toaster in Shenhua's house or whatever. And like you say, if we're talking about it from a story's perspective, whilst it has the better story content, I would say out of the two halves, although it's debatable, there's like some dips and troughs, and there's like some nice stuff around the mirrors when you're talking to different people. There's some nice stuff with Grandmaster Feng. What's her fucking name?
Oh, Aldier.
Aldier. There's some amazing stuff around there. The bell tower's pretty cool. Hide and seek stuff's like a lovely little moment.
Yeah,
like
that's
sort of like your original Shenmue sort of side quest-esque stuff. But other than that, I can't say I love the other aspects of the story, like the sort of the training montage thing that is kind of like working with Master Son possibly could have been better.
Yeah.
In hindsight. So it's tricky. On just the Shenmue 3 side of Guilin, I probably would put it as a B. But I think if we are including the Shenmue 2 stuff as well, we're going to have to put it at least an A, Matt.
Where we need a B plus.
Yeah,
we need a B plus. I think. Yeah, the Shenmue 2 section is what pulls it up. I think the Shenmue 3 section, I'm happy to put it as an A overall. I think, like you say, if we split them out, it would be probably a slightly different conversation.
Yeah.
And Bailu Village isn't a million. Certainly, Shenmue 3 element isn't a million miles off of being an A on its own. Actually, they just nailed that story content in there.
Yeah.
I'd have been a very happy man.
Agreed. If we got some more stuff, because like I say, the mirror stuff's really cool.
It's brilliant.
Like the envoy scenes, it sort of makes you think about the Emperor and sort of the connections that are going on there. But we just needed to learn more about Ryo's dad, because that is the place where his dad was 20 years ago, and there is characters that remember him, but unfortunately,
just needed
for some reason 20 years is too long. The memories have been wiped.
Yeah,
I don't know. There wasn't much going with it.
I think had it just had that element of a wow there, and feeling out why he was there, what happened while he was there, the training arc, some flashbacks maybe to some of that as well.
Yeah.
I think that would have just nailed it.
It might have nudged it into an S, because despite the game's flaws with like the combat and some of the grinding aspects within there, the stamina system and stuff, if the story narrative was Shenmue 2 incredible in terms of learning things and that sense of discovery in this village, that is kind of like what we had in our heads all those years that we were hoping to get from it. If that sense of discovery was in the game, I would honestly forget about all the negatives in Shenmue 3 gameplay wise, because this location, the setting they've created, is perfect. It just needed that narrative portion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is a big chunk of the experience. Shall we put it into a B, do you reckon, then?
I think most people would.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to. I can see the argument for an A. I absolutely can.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, you've talked me into it, and I think.
Well, I was trying to talk into an A, to be honest, because of the Shenmue 2 portion, but I think
yeah.
I think we've got to sort of focus on the Guilin as a whole.
Yeah, I think overall, I think a B plus would probably have done it, but we don't have that. And actually, if a lot of people, I think, would put Bailu in the B section just for all the things that we've discussed.
Makes sense.
So I'm happy with it there.
Okay, moving on to Niawu then, which I said a minute ago that I kind of prefer it to Bailu, and as beautiful as Bailu is, I think if the story aspects were nailed in Bailu, I would prefer Bailu. But because they're not, and it feels a bit of like a sort of a shell of what Bailu should have been, I kind of prefer Niawu. I kind of like, again, that sort of Shenmue 2-esque hotel vibe where you're looking out of the window at the balcony. It's really, really nice, especially at night with all the lights. It feels like this is a real location, and we did look it up. It's called Feng Yuan or whatever, isn't it? The actual town, which is like Phoenix Town. Again, when it rains, it looks amazing. Just the nighttime vibes in this little city are really nice. I like the Save Shenmue building, the little flowers around that area. I like the temples. I like Schilling's temple. I like Schilling as a character. Again, I wish we kind of had a bit more of it. This is where we got introduced to Ren again. And some of the Ren stuff is pretty cool. I like the Ren in Niawu. I love the Chobo-chan hunt. I think that in itself should give it a rank, if you know what I mean. It's just because of how good that is. Adds quite a lot to it. Then if you want to add maybe the Chowan Sign story DLC in there, fleshes some stuff out there with, Zhang, Yuandazu-esque kind of thing going on there. So there's a little bit more story. Perhaps not as, I don't know, there probably is as much story when you think about it with the story DLC in Niawu as there is in Bailu.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because there kind of is. There's like the thugs aspect going on. There's the big boss that's like Yanlang. So there is sort of like the same sort of things going on in both chapters. Maybe not the strongest ending. Would we agree?
I think not the ending's not the strongest, because I think actually, I mean, you can talk about the boat stuff and what we learn on the boat, which isn't great in terms of they don't really tell us too much new, apart from the fact Landy was taken in by the Chi men, and obviously Rio doesn't have the Phoenix Mirror anymore. So actually, there's quite a big change in that side of things, which is it's a major plot point. Whatever people want to say. Meeting
Liao Sun for the first time. This major character that we've been touted since '98.
These major plot points have happened. It's the way they've been executed doesn't help, and the way it's built to the castle raid and all the rest of it. It needed more time in the oven. Niawu. I take your points though in terms of the environment. It's absolutely stunning. The arrival's brilliant again, but Shenmue does location arrival better than a lot of games. It does make them feel like a big event, which I really enjoy.
Like you're going on a journey.
Yeah, like you are going on a journey. Nighttime's fantastic. It looks brilliant. Some times I think it suffers from feeling a little bit empty. I think that's partly because of the technical issues around the loading. So it doesn't feel as full and as bustling as, say, like a Hong Kong would do. And obviously it's not a bigger place, but there's that element to it that
they get away with it in Bailu, don't they, because of how rural it is, and that it doesn't need to be a million characters walking past. But this is a shopping district where there should really be more characters.
Exactly. There's a lot of copy and paste. I appreciate that's budgetary as well, and I can understand. I don't want to sound like I'm being an arsehole about it.
I mean, when you go back to the interview that we did earlier in the show, when he was saying how unique he wanted the motion capture, and then you've kind of got the thing of there's a lot of copy and paste, like you say, in terms of, I know it is technically two different moves, but the body check and the reverse body check, again, budgetary. I'm sure they would have made it more flashy if they could. I don't know. What do you think?
I think they would have done, or done something slightly different with it. It's hard, Niaowu, because I do take your point with the DLC stuff and that like story element to it. It does feel like there's a bit more going on from that side of things. But then the mainline story execution, I would argue, is probably worse than in Bailu Village.
Well, what if we actually got story content then? You just seem to be running back and forth, don't you? But for what reason?
So you're hunting these thugs still, aren't you? And you end up going back and forth. The red snakes. You end up having a few fights, which no issue with that, and some funny QTE sequences in that, which is fine.
I suppose we're looking for Shenfua's dad, aren't we? So you've got the photograph in the port, which leads to the Buddha shop. But then outside of that, what do we learn from that? There was the red snakes that kidnapped him, so then the narrative is basically just where are the red snakes?
Yeah, and it is a repeat of the Bailu narrative, whereas at least in Bailu we got some stuff on the mirrors and some other bits and pieces around that, and a WoW's time there. Mm-hmm. We didn't get any tidbits of information in Niaowu that would have lent to filling that out a bit. Now, it's implied a WoW's been there, and then if Ryo gets that move, doesn't he, from the
and it's weird.
The
it's
monk
like,
in
why?
the shrine.
There's no real
there's no explanation for it.
Mm.
And it's bearing in mind Niaowu is on this scroll that they find in Bailu Village. It seemed to me to have more significance than I think they conveyed in the game as well.
Yeah.
So.
And the characters aren't fleshed out at all, really.
No, they're not. So. And Shilling's a big example of that. That actually, you read her profile on the Japanese website, it's far more detailed than what we ended up getting. And I'm gutted we didn't, because I think we'd have got a really cool, memorable character there. But we are going over flaws that we've been over 1,000 times. And I stand by it. Shenmue 3 is a 7 out of 10 game, and I will stand by that until I'm blue in the face. But looking at Niaowu, straight up, for me it's a C. I think there's too many flaws in it.
Yeah.
That mean that pull it right down. The actual location is beautiful. It's really cool. I really like the actual location. Yeah. I think it's just suffered because of what we know in terms of the development of 3, and that for me, when we've looked at it as a whole, story, location, things to do and everything, it pulls it away to a C for me.
Yeah, and the sort of rushed ending
is
a little underwhelming and disappointing, really. I mean, it works, and the moment of Ryo entering the door and seeing Landi does give you chills a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's not quite on the same level as Ryo on top of the Tonu Yellowhead building, and that sort of scene was like breathtaking, wasn't it? Whereas this is more like, it does feel a little bit rushed. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I'm happy with C, actually. I think that's probably a happy norm for that. It's like you say, the actual location's nice enough to bring it higher than it probably should be on story content alone. So C is probably a good happy medium on that.
Excellent.
I think Bailu for me probably would be there as well. It's just brought up into the B ranking because of the Shenmue 2 aspect that we've sort of factored into there. So yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
And like I say, the mirror stuff.
Yeah.
Does help a little bit more. It's kind of what we want to know.
And
then your sort of final image, Matt. I don't know where we're going to put this or rank it, but it's Baisha. So obviously this should have been in Shenmue 3. It would have extended that ending, so it might have made... I don't know if it would have made Niawu feel more complete. I don't know. Depends what else they would have added to Niawu. Or if Niawu would then have maybe even been lower, because there was like nothing going on in Niawu. I don't know if the ending, like the Landy fight, was going to end up in the Baisha section is what I mean. So I don't know how you want to tackle this. I mean, setting wise, it looked intriguing for me. I liked the
yeah, definitely.
I definitely liked the Tulu buildings in Fujian, is it, or whatever that location is. Yu Suzuki seemed to be very fond of those things as well. We've seen twice photos of him standing outside those Tulu buildings. Story content, it sounded intriguing as well. He was saying that it was going to be like a siege, a big sort of warring kingdoms sort of fight. Maybe horseback aspect was going to be in there, because if you remember, he joked that there was going to be 1 horsepower.
Yeah.
So we potentially would have seen horses at this point, which again, some of that original concept art, like Ren on a horse, Shenfeng on a horse, may have made its way into this chapter. So that would have been really intriguing. The sort of infiltration mission that he was saying, where you got Ryo standing on a hill looking for binoculars, sort of touting his next move, I guess, to... I don't know if he would have been rescuing Shenfar at this point or what was going to go on here. But then I guess we can't really judge it, so I don't know.
I don't think we can judge it, not particularly, because it may not even appear. And as we know from the interview you did back last year, the Shenmue story is novelised, it's there, and they take bits out of it, don't they, to then make a coherent game. Given that Baisha was cut for reasons unknown, I'd love to find out why. Maybe that's a question for another interview one day. But I don't think we can judge it. It looked exciting. It sounded exciting. The Kickstarter was centered on a lot of it. It was like one of the big sections. And it's also got one of those scripts, hasn't it? It's one of the books.
Yeah, it's got its own chapter, hasn't it? Like chapter 5 or something.
Yeah, so I think more was planned for it. But because we don't know it's going to appear. We know Shooter is the next location. We know that. We don't know whether this is coming. It's got to be unknown for me.
Yeah, I'm happy to put it in the unknown category because, again, essentially it is unknown. The thought of it and the excitement thinking about it, I could see it being like at least a sort of a C, a B type of thing.
Yeah, I could.
Maybe.
I could.
And depending on how they would have nailed it with the story, it could have been A territory if there was like a epic Shenmue 2 ending-esque sort of thing going on there.
But we'll see. It remains to be seen. I think they were shaping it up to have that Shenmue 2 feel ending type thing that was going to be a big epic ending, and it just didn't happen.
All of the sort of the unique elements were going to be there by the sounds of what we were hearing about it. So unfortunately, that made Shenmue 3 as a whole suffer, I guess. The fact that it wasn't there. That could have really propelled Shenmue 3 a little bit better for me.
Agreed.
So let's have a little review here then, Matt. So together, combined, me and Matt, we've ranked the sort of disc 1/disc 2 portion of Shenmue 1 as an S tier.
Yep.
That's Yokosuka, Yamanoshi, Sakuroka, and Buita.
Yeah.
Then we ranked both Wanchai and Kowloon as an A tier, which I think is quite fair, actually.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And then we ranked the harbour from Shenmue 1 and the combined ending of Shenmue 2, Guilin, with the Bailu Village section of Shenmue 3 as a B tier, which is probably about right as well, actually. And then Niawu we've ranked as a C rank, mainly the sort of story drops that down probably a rank for us both. And then obviously Baisha we just ranked as unknown. So hopefully you enjoyed that, guys. Let us know if you want to do any more tier lists in the future, maybe like characters or some other aspect of Shenmue, maybe even design a tier list for us to do on either a show or a stream or something like Grace has done here. And I think we'd happily incorporate that into one of the shows for sure.
Yeah, I'd be more than down for doing it. I will see if I made one years ago.
Possibly so, yeah. Or if you were bored shitless, let us know as well. And we will never do one ever again. But I think that brings us to the sort of the end of the show, Matt. So I will say, whilst Matt's going to come out with the spiel in a minute, just stick around because we do have a special treat with the piece of music that we're going to be playing at the end of the show. So definitely stick around to find out what we've got in store for you there. But Matt, if you want to take us away with
the usual spiel.
The usuals.
So, usual spiel, 4th of every month, hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4, 8 p.m. UK, 9 p.m. Europe, 3 p.m. Eastern, midday Pacific, 4 a.m. in the morning in Japan. We tweet as one the same message at the same time to get the hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4 trending. Video is out there for anybody who wants scheduled tweets and all the rest of it. Make sure you check that out. The more of you that get out there, the better. We've trended months on row. I think we're 9 months or 8 months in a row now. I've lost count, but we need to keep going with it. I do think it's having an impact. Otherwise, why would magazines like Hobby Consoles be picking this up? I think the message somewhere is getting through. Let's just see what 2025 brings, but we cannot let up now, especially with in-games now on board. Away from that, you can find us all over the internet, social media. I'll start off with social media stuff. So you've got us on Instagram, Shenmue_Dojo, X/Twitter, Shenmue_Dojo, Facebook, Shenmue Dojo, YouTube is Shenmue Dojo VOD, believe it or not. Blue Sky, ShenmueDojo.com on there. Threads, Shenmue Dojo. I think we're pretty much anywhere and everywhere that you can find us. You also can find our website, ShenmueDojo.com, and you can join us on the forums, which is ShenmueDojo.com/forums. And we also have a Discord server, which is really active. Lots of people chatting away in there as well, where you can discuss all things Shenmue to your leisure. I think we've covered almost anywhere and everywhere that you can discuss Shenmue, apart from fax machines.
Pages.
There you go.
Great stuff there, guys. Yeah, definitely check out the Discord channel. Quite a few new members joined recently, so yeah, always a good fun time. Cheers for that, Matt. So, like I mentioned, we're going to end with a bit of a treat here. So this is a full 11-minute piece of music from Survival Spheres, who's just released a couple of weeks ago now on his channel. Sort of the tail end of Christmas here with the vibes that you're going to be feeling in a minute. Sort of mysterious undertones, yet still very much Shenmue sounding. This piece of music is called Fading Season Medley, and hopefully you enjoy it, guys, and we will see you very, very soon with another Shenmue Dojo show shortly. Take care, guys. Thank you.
See you later, guys. Have a good one.
Oh, look at the time.